sooner we start, the sooner we can finish on it. So, Raylan, do you want to kind of kick us off, kind of give us an overview where we're at tonight, what we're looking at? And again, this is a workshop, so please feel free to get up. There's some food back here in the corner. If you need to get a drink, you're more than welcome to get up and go about your business as you need to while we work through this tonight.
Good evening, City Council. So tonight, kind of a wrap up, but there's a couple of presentations, discussions, I think, that have been requested before we have our final discussion. So first is going to be VRT talking about the 2025 fees that they have proposed, and then we'll go to our legal discussion to see how that's funded, and then we'll wrap up everything else. So I'll turn it over to VRT first.
Okay, very good. Elaine, if you'd like to come forward. It's good to see you this evening.
Thank you for having me, and I still don't have the presentation up, so I'm going to ask Kate if she can bring her laptop up here and I can follow along, if that's all right. Because you guys don't have anything for us to look at.
We don't, so we...
So...
I don't have a presentation.
Oh, you don't?
I haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, sorry, it got rejected, I think.
Okay, I apologize.
That's all right. Was it too big, the file size, or?
I think I got the email wrong.
While she's doing that, I guess I can just give a little update on how our service change has been going, and let you all know that the new 40 and 42 have gotten a lot of ridership. I don't have the final numbers yet because it's so early. We just changed on June 3rd, but gotten a lot of good input from riders on both of those. If you'll remember right, the 42 now travels between Caldwell and downtown Boise once an hour all day instead of just being peak hour. And so it should be a service that will be a whole lot more reliable for folks who are trying to make that trip. We're still struggling here, sorry. The other thing I can tell you is that we've been working hard with Metro Community Services on our new Beyond Access service. There'll be a slide about this later if we get the slide presentation up. And that service, if you'll remember right, is a 2-county-wide service that covers almost all of the developed area in both counties and provides rides for older adults and persons with disabilities through a call-in request system or an online request system, either one. And in doing that, folks can get picked up at their door and dropped off at the door of the place that they're going to, and be able to get to appointments, not just in Caldwell or Nampa, but now all the way over in Ada County if that's where they have to go. It also provides services to the senior centers. In this case, the Nampa and Caldwell folks are getting a lot of service from that part of it. And additionally, it, thank you, provides rides, social rides. And so we've begun doing both lunch visits and also some dinner visits for various groups on that service. Okay, looks like we've got this going. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you an overview of the budget request that we sent and of our services. I talked briefly about the services, fixed route 40 and 42 and the on-demand 150, and then some of our specialized services as well. Next slide. Okay. 2 more, please. Route 40. So as you can see, the Route 40 had 14,000 boardings in 2023. That's the last year we have full records for. As I noted, it just changed. We expect that ridership to go up quite a bit. Had 58 boardings a day, and it's already up 30% over 2022. It was consolidated with the Route 23, which, if you'll remember, didn't have a lot of ridership, and streamlined so that it kind of combined the best of both the Route 40 and the 43. The Route 42 had 24,000 boardings last year, 85 boardings a day. Of course, it starts in Caldwell, so many of the early morning boardings start here. I don't have an exact number for how many are in Caldwell, unless it's down here in the bottom. Scrolling down, sorry. So the Route 42 is funded through a combination of contributions from Caldwell, Nampa, Meridian, and Boise, also Canyon County, and then we have about $500,000 in federally directed funds to match what we get locally on that particular route. In June of 2024, it changed the service model and began going all day. We're pretty, again, as I noted, we're pretty excited about that. Sorry, I'm playing with this computer, which is not mine. There we go. Should be smoother from here, thank you. So the on-demand service is the request to ride service in both Nampa and Caldwell. It also changed in June of 2024, and the changes were that the lines, boundaries that identify where you can get a ride and where you can't get a ride were clarified by going along roadways rather than being the bubble that it used to be. This is a service that doesn't pick you up at your door, but will pick you up at a virtual stop as close to your door as we have that virtual stop, and then again drop you off at a virtual stop near your destination or at another bus stop if you're going to one of our fixed routes to take a ride from there. It has a 40 square mile service area that has 114,000 people and 50,000 jobs in it. And it is in a place where 28% of the people who live in this area have only one car and 13% live in poverty. Last year it had 30,000 boardings, 120 daily boardings, and as we learned when we added extra service to it, we believe that there's opportunity to have even more boardings on this one if we can figure out a way to get a little bit more service on it. Last year, it was funded through a combination of funds with both the City of Caldwell and the City of Nampa. City of Caldwell's portion of that is about 45%. City of Nampa's is about 55%. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Access services are those services for persons who qualify because they have a disability and are unable to access a fixed route service. As a result of the changes in the system last year, our access service area in Canyon County was reduced quite a bit. You can see the red outline was the old access service area, and the blue outline is the new access service area. That's because previously access was followed the on-demand services, but now that we have fixed route on the boulevard, we have to follow the fixed route. However, because we had that beyond access service that I told you about, many of the people who used to be covered on access can potentially ride the beyond access instead. Last year we had 3,000, close to 3,000 boardings, or 8 boardings a day. This is a service that because we are a federal recipient, we are required to offer anywhere near our fixed routes. The funding from this comes from a combination of contributions from the City of Nampa, City of Caldwell, College of Western Idaho, and Canyon County. And over $100,000 is contributed by our federal funds. Beyond Access, next slide please, is the service I was telling you about at the beginning. It runs from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., is a door-to-door service. It provides rides for services that previously were separate services but also had separate service areas. So if I wanted to get a ride from Star to Caldwell or from Caldwell to Eagle, those were all on separate services and I couldn't get that ride. And also I might not know what number to call. So now with this consolidated service, it's one phone number, you call for the ride, you can travel all the way from the western part of Canyon County to the eastern part of Ada County. And again, it's a door-to-door ride. So far, we've been able to provide almost every ride that's been requested. Very few have had to be turned down because we didn't have a seat available. We're expecting this service to grow a fair amount. Again, it's for persons over 60 years old. You have to provide proof and be signed up for it, and or someone who has a disability that qualifies. Next slide, please. We also do rides to wellness in Canyon County. These rides are supported by the healthcare system. You do not contribute to them, except the little bit of the general overhead contribution that you give to us so that we can administer all these programs. With this particular program, we contract with private sector providers, non-emergency medical transport is what it's called, to provide these rides. Typically, they provide rides for Medicare and Medicaid, but in this case, the hospitals pay us to support providing rides because it saves the hospital services money if people don't miss their appointments. Last year, we provided almost, in Caldwell itself, we provided almost 1,200 rides. We're also in the throes of starting to engage on the Nampa-Caldwell Boulevard study. This study will look at services between Nampa and Caldwell on the boulevard and also look for opportunities for land use that supports those services and supports development in general. Stakeholder meetings will start in August and September. Kate's running that project, and I know she's got volunteers from the city of Caldwell to participate in our steering committee on that. Thank you for that participation. So finally, we'll get to the Route 56, and we proposed, although you ultimately chose not to fund this route last year, to propose it again because those of you who know me know that I'm pretty persistent if I think that there's something that's actually going to do good for the citizens of the area that I'm trying to serve. And this is a route that I'm convinced will do that. I'm also convinced that it will be beneficial for the city of Caldwell. You have done an incredible job with your downtown. It's become a big regional draw, so much so that you've had to go to paid parking. So clearly there's a lot of people that want to get down here. There's opportunities, we think, to get people down here without having to park downtown. People who might not come otherwise because of the parking. People who will come more often, perhaps, because they don't have to pay for the parking. We know that this is not for free by any means. We know that this route costs you money. It will cost us money. You'll get it for about a third the full cost of it because of the federal funding we can bring to the table. And I've had early contacts with College of Idaho, who indicates that if the route existed and it showed ridership, they might be interested in supporting it, just as College of Western Idaho supports our Route 45. It's harder for them to get on board before the route exists. So our request this year is to give us 1 year of trying this route. We'll give you before and after numbers. We'll do everything we can to promote it. We'll work with the College of Idaho to see if they want to be partners. And if it doesn't work, I'll go away and I won't ask for it again. If it does work, if we reach the ridership numbers that we agree on, we'll look for partnerships to lower your cost on it, but we'll also look to increase ridership on it, which will also lower your costs because those fares will come off of your costs in the long term. Just as we talked about last year, it would provide 30-minute service up and down the boulevard from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., actually 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. I double-checked this right before I left the office because I thought these numbers were just a bit off. And we're convinced that it would allow people better access to your downtown and increase your economic development activity. So the budget request, based on a total budget of hours of $36 million, 15 million of those are local revenue. Your request is only 487,000 of that 15 million. 43,000 of that is for a general assessment. 24,000 is for capital, which supports regular repair and maintenance, replacement of rolling stock, those kinds of things. And then 419,000 would be for service. Of that, 175,000 is service on the Route 56. So we request that you consider funding this full amount for 1 year. Give us a chance. Last year you asked, how do we know if it will have ridership? We know from previous experience when there was a route like this on the boulevard that there was 7,000 riders. Now I'm going to forget if that was monthly. There were more riders on that route than any other route in Canyon County. That much I know, and I can't tell you the exact numbers. I don't have it at the top of my head, I apologize. But if you give us a year to see whether or not there would be ridership on this or not, we'll find out. I am so confident that there will be ridership that I felt compelled to bring this back to you because as a public servant myself, I feel like my job is to make sure that public servants are aware of the things that they can do that will make their community better. And the growth potential on this particular route, I think, does that. If you choose not to fund this route, I would hope that at very least you enter into conversations with us about how to find funding for it next year. I really think funding it this year is the way to go because we can prove that it works. But please at least give us a chance to grow into this route. We think it's one that will make Caldwell a better place. We'll make sure that Destination Caldwell has the service that it deserves. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate that. So some questions from council. Please, I do ask that have questions. Let's discuss this. We don't want to happen again what happened last year where it was approved at the budget and then it was changed because that puts VRT in a very difficult situation. It's been approved, they're spending money, they're out there doing the studies, showing it to the public, and then when the resolution, I think is the right word, comes to council for that funding to have it denied, it puts them in a very difficult situation. So open and honest discussion right now of where you want to be, where you want to go from the council would be much appreciated. So I see we got a green light right there. Councilor Stoddard.
Mr. Mayor and Mrs. Clegg, I think one of the reasons why when we looked at this whole project and program this last year, early this year rather, I think Councilor Allgood brought up the comment that when you look at our total population versus the percentage of ridership that Caldwell has, and then you look at what we were paying, you know, number one, we didn't have that much ridership. Number two, it looked like we were subsidizing other cities. Those are the two major reasons, you know, why we rejected that $645,000 that you wanted, and we reduced that to $345,000. And again, we still don't have any numbers as far as ridership for Caldwell, whether that actually did increase. I mean, you say it's going to, but we don't have any hard facts to prove that. So those are the reasons why it was reduced. And then it's my understanding you got a major boost from the federal government here just recently too, did you not?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Static, thank you for that. Yes, we did get a major grant from the federal government. It's for capital only. We can't use it for operating. It's to improve electric infrastructure and buy more electric buses in Ada County and not in Canyon County. In terms of ridership, one of the things that's difficult for us, we've been trying to overcome it, is identifying rides with riders. We have an automatic passenger counting system, so there's no identifier of who that passenger is. We know where they got on. It doesn't necessarily mean that we know where they came from. We're working to improve that system, and I apologize that we don't have better numbers, to be honest. I intend to have better numbers. This is what I can tell you. If you got the Route 150, which is the on-demand system, we're confident that 45% of those riders are Caldwell riders. Just like the split that between what we charge Caldwell and Nampa is based on, in part on that, and on the population between the two cities. And so in that particular system, you had 30,000 rides last year. That's a lot within Caldwell. A Route 56 would be fully within Caldwell, and the expectation would be, other than the people who drive to Happy Day, use it as a park and ride and come downtown, vast majority of the ridership on that ride would be Caldwell residents.
I'm just saying it's really difficult to justify to taxpayers, and they're the ones that pay for this, when you're kind of betting on the come. I mean, that doesn't work in business. You got to have a good plan, and you know this is going to happen, but we think, just doesn't work, so.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Static, we think is based on good projections, based on sound science in our remix program that we use for planning. I understand your concerns, although, to be honest, I didn't hear them quite that way last year at the hearing, or I probably would have tried to bring a little bit different information.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
I'm still saying the projections, we still don't have numbers on our ridership versus our population, and that's a key number, at least for me, so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for being here. You're doing your job, so this isn't, nothing up here is personal, this is all business. And the thing that continues to strike me is our own traffic study that we had presented to us said that there wasn't a demand for buses. And so we get this conflicting information, and when we have a paid study done that comes to us and said 1% had any interest in buses, that's what gives me heartburn in spending those taxpayer dollars to a greater degree on something that our study said there's no interest in.
Do you mind which study was that? So we know. I'm looking, I think our public works director.
Yeah,
is a little puzzled.
it was our overall transportation study, and there was a section there on public transportation.
Yeah, do you want to address that,
Mr.
Rob?
Mayor,
Oh, yeah.
Councilmember Williams, while your staff members thinking about this, I guess I would tell you what I found after you made that statement, because I was wondering as well. That was a transportation study primarily done on driving. It wasn't the broad outreach that you do if you're trying to find out the people who don't drive today but take other means and what other means they take and whether they're interested. So that 1%, as I understand it, and even that was done at a very high level, was only people that are today driving and whether they'd have any interest in changing. Doesn't mean that of your total population, only that many are interested. We know that 28% of your population only has one car. We know that 13% live in poverty, and we also know that 31% of the total population in Caldwell doesn't drive. Either they're too young, or they have decided not to drive anymore because they're too old, or they've lost their privileges, or they simply don't have a driver's license. So while of those people who are currently driving today, and certainly seeing that there's very few choices, I can understand why they say they wouldn't be interested in riding on transit. What that didn't look at, as I understand the study, was people who might not be driving today, who might not have the choice to drive, and whether they were interested or not. My guess is, knowing statistics from other cities who've done that deeper study, would be that 10 to 20% of your population would be very interested in riding, and perhaps more. I do know from your comprehensive plan update last year, there was considerable interest in that update from people wanting to look at options other than driving. So understand where those numbers came from as I understand them. I certainly don't dispute them, but I think that perhaps they weren't the full picture.
Sure, and I appreciate your passion. I would expect you to campaign for what you're here to tell us. I just understood our study differently, and we'll have to look at that again, but thank you for being here.
You bet.
And what was that percent, the Caldwell non-drivers, was it 30? I just want to make sure I get that right. Something about a 30-something percent
I believe it's
non-drivers?
31% valley-wide, so I said that number for Caldwell, but I'm pretty confident it's
And
really
that's valley,
close to that.
that's like in the valley, on average is 31%? Okay. I'll write that down. Councilor Elgid.
Yeah, going back to numbers, I was writing down ridership as you were showing the slides, and I didn't write down the small ones, just the big ones, but it's over 55,000 riders in 2023. But when I see 55,000 riders, is that valley-wide, is that Canyon, is that Ada? Can you differentiate it all?
You bet. So the riders on the 40 and 42 are all riders, including Ada County. However, the vast majority of the riders on both of those services come from Canyon County, because what those services do is provide rides that they otherwise might not be able to get to a job in Meridian or Boise or somewhere further east. And I don't have a breakdown. Like I say, it's really hard to get that breakdown from fixed route services. The on-demand, the 30,000 rides, were the ones that I was talking about that we're very confident that about 45% of them come from Caldwell, 55% come from Nampa. Only provides rides within Nampa and Caldwell, provides rides between the two cities, but the folks who either start or originate in Caldwell, we're confident are about that 45% number.
Follow up, yeah.
And the medical rides and the disability rides are provided in Caldwell, Nampa, all over, without a cost to the city?
So neither of those require a cost to the city, but they're only available either to people who have a need for a medical ride or an older adult or person with disability who qualifies for the other.
Right. Okay.
But no, you do. Your contribution to those is that little bit that you contribute to general overhead that we use to support the administration of those. In your case, it's 43,000.
Okay.
Councilor Dittenber.
So I'll make sure that everybody knows for the record that I do support public transportation. In a previous life of mine, I relied on it heavily. Anybody who served in the military should know that that's how you got around when you're in the military, is you jumped on a bus. I'm not saying we're a military town or a military community, but after we turned down the funding the last time, I had a number of people reach out to me. A couple of them I see here in the audience tonight, expressing the need for a fixed route. And so a couple things we need to consider. We're a growing community, and if we're going to constantly battle traffic and talk about roads being inefficient, buses provide that type of relief. The second thing is I'm going to use a medical analogy here if I didn't use it before. If our hospital provided no knee surgeries, we wouldn't be able to say Caldwell doesn't have any knee problems. No, we just say Caldwell doesn't provide knee surgery. So the fact that we don't have bus services doesn't mean we don't need the bus services. The second thing is, and I'll have a question here for Elaine in just a minute, is I was really disappointed that when the council approved the traffic impact study back in, I don't know, February, March, the 38-page document had literally 3/4 of a page on public transportation. And so if we're going to talk about it in a healthy way, we probably need to commit more than just 3/4 of a page in a traffic impact study that we're asked to approve as a city council. So knowing that I do support this, and I think incrementally going into it with a $500 and some thousand request is a lot better than a $640,000 request. If the council was to approve this and the route was to get going, how quickly do you think the VRT would be able to provide ridership numbers?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Dittenberg, great question. Because of all of the planning we did last year, we would be ready to hit the ground running with this route on day one, which would be October 1st. To the mayor's question, last year, first year I was on board, there was a practice of sending out requests, having councils approve a budget, and then sending a cooperative agreement sometime later, typically in November or later than that, getting that cooperative agreement signed and then moving forward with the budget. As we learned last year, that doesn't always work, and so I've instituted a new practice of making sure I follow everyone's budget process, and as soon as you turn in your L2 form to your county asking for certification, I will send you the cooperative agreement based on the amount that you have in that budget and make a request that you put a resolution on your agenda on the same day that you certify that budget so that we're on the same page. And I can start my budget year certified just as you have started your budget year with a certification. So having said that, if you approve it, we'd be confident that we had the money and we could go forward on October 1st because we've got all the planning in place for it. That first month we'd probably say those ridership numbers would be pretty iffy, either high or low, depending. Sometimes people jump on board because they really want to try it, and some people avoid it because they don't know. But by the second month, we should be able to provide ridership numbers within a week or two of the end of the month and do that all year long to check it and see how it's going.
Very good. So I just have a couple of comments. Unless if there's any other questions. Oh, sorry, Councilor Doty. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we all support ridership to some extent. We gave over $300,000 last year. It looks like $345,142. So I would support that amount again this year based on the data that's been provided. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So just a couple comments I have in those if are any other questions. So I do support public transportation as well. It is one of those, again, we all have our thoughts and opinions and respect those. I do think it's a need for a community, provides a very necessary service, especially for those individuals that aren't able to drive, whether it's through age, through disabilities, whatever that is. It opens up so many doors to them that they otherwise would not have had. You know, there's many people out there that aren't lucky like some of us that have family members in town or neighbors that can give them rides, and they rely solely on that public transportation. So with public transportation, though, I think it's important to know that, in my opinion, it will never break even. Even the major metropolitan areas, it's difficult for them to even get close to breaking even. So it's tough to, and it's one of those things where it's tough to say, okay, we'll give you this much, but we need to see that the ridership, what are we paying for each ride on that? And it's important to take that into account, make sure it is providing a service. But to me, again, it's a public need. Similar to like our parks in our community, our swimming pool, things of that nature. But I would say that's even more important than a park or a swimming pool. Those are great and wonderful for our citizens to go out and to be able to throw a frisbee, to run, to go swim. We lose money on those hand over fist. But it provides that need for the public to get out and to exercise and to do those things for your mental health, for your physical health. So those are important, and I see public transportation much like that, if not even more so. It provides, perhaps rides to the grocery store to get your food. It gets some of our senior citizens out of the home. Again, those with disabilities that aren't able to get around very much. It provides them really potential unlimited opportunities. So I see that as one of those things where it's difficult to say, well, we need it, but only if we can break even. We won't break even. So we have to weigh out the public good that you feel it it brings to your community versus the cost on it. I'm a former small business owner, and so it's very similar in that with, if we were wanting to bring out a new product in the soda shop that I used to own, we would do our research, study it out. Okay, it's going to cost us this much money to buy the equipment. We expect to, sell it for this much. We expect this kind of return on it. But we didn't know those numbers until we actually pulled the trigger on it. We didn't know we expect to sell 300 snow cones to help pay for this machine. We didn't know until we bought the machine and went out and advertised for it. We just had to make sure we did all the research. We felt we were comfortable with those numbers, and then we pulled the trigger, and then we learned from it. If the numbers came in really good, we kept the snow cone machine, we kept doing it. If not, we would try to sell it and move on to something else. And so I think it's similar in this case where you've done that research, those things. I agree, the numbers would be nice, kind of like what Councilor Stoddard was talking about, to kind of where are we at right now. Obviously, we need to know where we're at now. If we want to be at double that number in a year or two, we need to know where we are now. And I think you would agree with that. So we do need to know those numbers, do that research, and then it's ultimately up to the council whether they want to pull that trigger. If they feel that that public benefit outweighs the cost. There are some hidden savings as well that are very difficult to quantify. Every time you take a vehicle off the road, it saves you, and Bruce Mills, our Deputy Director of Transportation, I believe would agree with this. It saves you a trip on the road, which saves you money because now you're not chip sealing it as often, or it's not wearing down the road as much. So it may be those little amounts, but if we could build that ridership, that does start to make some difference in the maintenance of that we have to do to our streets. And those are costs that are very difficult to narrow down and pinpoint, but they are a cost savings on that. But again, it still won't equal out to being a cost neutral on that. But again, it's got to decide, is it a public need that you feel supports the money you put in? And again, it's, what is that monetary amount? But I would support, that 56, I believe is the number on it, Route 56. I know I've used public transportation in the past. When I worked at ACHD, I rode the bus into work every day. And this is different because it's local, but it does provide, up and down the boulevard, which is a lot of stops on there. It provides to Happy Day Transit where you can get on other buses to go to Nampa, Meridian, Boise. It provides those people to get to downtown, to our plaza. It provides, Walmart is a big stop along there. So you'd have several, the College of Idaho, Albertsons. So there's several of those stops that would provide some public benefit on that. So those are just my thoughts in that regard. So I do appreciate you coming this evening, and I think it would be good. I appreciate Councilor Doty. He did kind of state where he's at in regards to funding as we move forward. I think it'd be good to have, again, it doesn't have to be unanimous, but kind of get everybody's thoughts on where you're at, so we know what to come forward against. So VRT has a good understanding of what is that number. I don't know if we do that now, or I know we're going to do a budget wrap up not tonight, but some other time if you'd want to. So I'm looking at Raylene, if she wants more of some concrete understanding tonight. Okay, so she does want some of that tonight. So I know Councilor Doty, again, appreciate he's willing at the 345. Again, this isn't like it is, I guess, kind of a negotiation, but it's not like an auction. I want, 345 here, what do we got over there? But just everybody kind of the sense of where the council is. And I think the big focus probably is on that additional route. Where are we at on that and those numbers that have been presented? So maybe we pull those back up on the slide and just have, again, some of that discussion of where everybody is and where you feel comfortable, so we know what number to bring into. Or also remember that you can always come down. So if you're not really sure, you're like, I think it's a great idea, but I want to digest it a little more. You could say, okay, well, let's go with the higher number, because you can always reduce, right? Once we publish, you cannot go above that number, but you can always reduce it. So if you still, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's worth looking into more, then I would side on the higher number, because again, you can bring that down at the final meeting, but you cannot go higher. So I think that's important to kind of realize as
Mr.
well.
Mayor, could I make one comment?
Yes, please do so. And then we'll go into
To that end, particularly, Councilmember Static, it occurs to me that I can go back to our transportation planner who works with our projection software and get a number of boardings and alightings and where those are in the system and which ones were in Caldwell. I can't say for certain that those are Caldwell residents that are riding it, but I can say for certain that one way or the other they're doing business in Caldwell. I don't know how soon I can get that. Those are really hard numbers to get. Like I say, it's not intuitive. I wish it were. We're working on getting better software, but I will promise you that, especially if you go with this higher number, even if you don't, I will get you whatever we can get out of that and get back to you as soon as we can get it. The other thing I'd note, Mayor is actually absolutely right. public transportation, just like any transportation, doesn't make money. It costs money. Just as it costs to build a road so that people can then spend their own money to drive on it, with public transportation, the difference is with public transportation, you're making an investment that with really very little money, people can get on and actually get that ride. And so for the people who may have difficulty paying for transportation when they have to drive everywhere, it actually eases that burden quite a bit. And it also can, as a result, provide a lot of economic development for the community, because that's money that then stays in their pocket that they typically spend locally, rather than money that's going to oil companies or car companies, which is where most of our transportation system is focused today. So you're right, it does cost money, just like your new swimming pool cost $5+ million and 150 people a day use it for 3 months. This will cost money, and some number of people will use it every day, but they'll use it for 12 months a year, not 3.
And so too, real quick before we jump in, these numbers that are up on the screen, just so that we all understand them. So that total request of $487,000, $487,348, that is for the baseline, correct? And then if you wanted to add Route 56, it'd be an additional $175,000? Or does that include in the 487?
$487,000 includes the $175,000 that would pay for the Route 56.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for that clarification. Okay, Councilor Ramos.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments, Mr. Mayor, and I know we've had clarification that there's no conflict of interest, but I think it's important that at least everybody here, if they don't know and anybody watching knows, you're the chairman of VRT, is that correct?
That's correct. So I do sit on the board of VRT as the chair. Councilor Stoddard sits on the board as well.
Okay, but I just think it's important that as you lobby for it, as we're preparing to make a consideration, I think it's important that we disclose that, even though our understanding is, according to state code, it's not a conflict. I also feel like we're saying both things. We're saying it will save us money by taking cars off the road, but when I mentioned the study that we did, we were told, well, that has to do with the people that are drivers. Well, if the study that I mentioned has to do with the drivers, they're not going to get off the road anyway. So it can't be both ways, is what I'm hearing. And I agree with what Councilor Doty said. We do support public transportation to the tune of $350,000 in round numbers, and that's a lot of money to be contributing to a program that helps the citizens of Caldwell. We're not neglecting public transportation, and so I'm happy to continue with that amount.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Councilor Stoddard.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to mention too that, part of our transportation problems are heavy traffic like dump trucks, gravel trucks. It's not pickup trucks and cars, and these buses that have these large batteries in, if they're anything like the semis that they're coming out with now, they're going to weigh a lot above of what we do with the gas rigs, I would guess. I don't know that, but I would guess that. And again, when you get up to that weight compared to cars and pickups, it's an issue for our transportation department also.
Councilmember Stoddard, none of the buses in Canyon County are electric, and we don't have plans in the near future to go that direction. In fact, I'm looking really hard into leaning into compressed natural gas with renewed natural gas via the dairies and the digesters that they may be building.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and like I say, just for the audience concerned, the subject of rail comes up too, and I know you're supportive of it, and the mayor is, and so is Mayor McLean, but I sent all of you a study that the Canyon County Concerned Citizens put on, I think it was 5 different cities, and the cost to the taxpayers of that, it was enormous, and this thing could balloon, maybe not into those kind of figures, but at what cost? We as taxpayer representatives have to ask us, at what cost to the community do we do this, whether it's a benefit, and what benefit is that number? And that's where it lies. I'll grant you that public transportation isn't going to pay for itself, but again, we have to look at what cost do we pay to justify that. And like I say, I have a hard time justifying almost $500,000 for the ridership that that we had earlier this year on the percentages, so, anyway.
So,
Thank you.
so maybe just kind of additional information on kind of what Councilor Stock's been over there. What type of buses do you plan on having, like with, if the Route 56 were approved, would it be the standard buses we see in downtown Boise? Would it be smaller? And do you know what the weight of those types of buses are?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Static. As we lean into the compressed natural gas in Canyon County, which we're hoping to do in partnership with your dairy industry, we would go to smaller compressed natural gas buses for the on-demand service. We would continue to run the larger compressed natural gas buses, like the new one that you may have seen with the Valley Regional Transit lines on it, the purple, orange, and blue. That's our newest compressed natural gas bus. It's a 40-footer, or 35-footer, excuse me. Compared to many of the buses in the Boise system, it's much lighter. But the majority of the buses on the on-demand system that we're looking at are smaller buses.
Councilor Allgood.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with both sides here a little bit, and I'm leaning towards your total request, and the reason I am, and please correct me if I'm making an assumption that's wrong, but if we include Route 56 for the 487,000, that additional route serves Caldwell residents, period. That's a Caldwell route serving the people back and forth in Caldwell.
Yes.
And that's what's attractive to me. These other numbers, we have difficulty saying where they started, where they finished, because they're all over the valley, which is still a good thing, but when we look at Route 56, that's Caldwell. We're putting a bus in Caldwell every day, 6 to 6. And so that interests me. I believe we're getting a bang for our buck there. That's where I'm going, I guess.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Allgood, absolutely. That's actually the beauty, I think, of the Route 56. It's fully within Caldwell. We can be pretty confident, like I said, other than those people who drive to Happy Day Transit Center and use it as a park and ride so that they can come to your downtown, we'll be confident that those are all Caldwell riders. I would add, if you put the number in the budget, in the time between now and your budget hearing, we can get you as much information as possible on that other ridership, and also work with you and the College of Idaho to find out their interest. My early conversations with them are that they are very supported and potentially interested in supporting.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments from anybody that we haven't heard from?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I don't want to drag it all out, but
Yeah.
I am interested in this Route 56 because it serves Caldwell people exclusive, well, not exclusively, I don't want to say that because that probably wouldn't be accurate, but I feel like if we're talking about Caldwell taxpayers' dollar, that's where they're getting their bang for their buck, is Caldwell rides. And so that has been discussed extensively here. This is not a money-making situation. This is something, again, like the pool and the golf courses and all the other things that take tax dollars. But, and again, I like the idea of having a route that serves Caldwell people back and forth up and down the boulevard in that area. I believe it is a value. Anyway, that's why I'm leaning that direction.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Councilor Denver.
Since Councilor Allgood decided to drag it out, I'll just continue to march it down the road a little further. One of the things that bus services help the most is, the people they help the most are those who are without vehicles, those who are aging, those who may be in a special needs category, or those who may be going to school or getting an education. And again, like Councilor Allgood says, this provides services to the citizens of Caldwell and to nobody else, and I think we have an obligation to provide a valuable services to all people who are citizens of Caldwell, and especially those that may not be so inclined or able to get behind the wheel of a vehicle.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. We do have one more green light. Councilor Register.
I just have a couple of questions. So as far as the route here in Caldwell that goes up and down the boulevard, has there been any outreach to the community to see what their feedback is on what's needed and what isn't? And do we have any
Thank you.
information on that?
Mayor Wagner and Councilmember Register. In fact, there has been. The year before I was hired, there was a study done called Connect Canyon County, and a lot of outreach was done during that after I was hired, and we began looking at improving the bus system. We did another round of outreach, and 4,000 people ultimately responded to that. My memory is that there were upwards of 400 in Caldwell itself that responded to that. I can tell you, and I was going to ask you this, there's two people in the audience that were so interested in what was happening today that they came. I don't know if you'll take comment today. I know it's a workshop, but in fact, our research, our surveys, our outreach say that the people in Caldwell would be very interested in this and would be more than willing to ride if there were a route like we're talking about that just gets people back
Do
and
we
forth
have
in the
anything
city.
current?
What's that?
Is there anything current, though? The reason I'm asking is because if we don't have numbers that we can compare to, like from on a financial side of it, which I understand about the break even, but if we don't have any numbers to be able to look at or compare to, do we have any recent surveys, or are they all sort of
So
older?
the most current surveys we have were last summer.
Okay.
What I can, and I'll provide those to you, what I can also provide to you, there used to be a route that was fully within Caldwell. I can't remember the route number. It was before my time. I think it was, last time it ran was about 8 years ago. Our general manager in the Canyon County system has experience with that route, and she told me she could pull the numbers of ridership from that, which was 8 years ago before all the growth that's happened recently. So I'll get you the surveys, how recent they were, and I'll get you that ridership number.
Okay, because I think for me too, I'm probably still on the side of honoring what we had given you last year, and I think we have a lot of things going on in the city, so it's hard, right? Because you have to figure out where the needs are, and I just need something more to, do you know what I'm saying, to see where the need is as far as this is concerned, because I agree with Councilor Williams that we are providing something.
Yeah.
We're not just leaving the city high and dry, it's just whether or not the city can afford to provide more, right?
Thank you.
And then I guess my other question too was, once before at a meeting, we had, there was another bus company, right, that had come, I don't remember, was it Caldwell Bus Company, or there's,
Caldwell Transportation, probably.
I guess, and they felt like their company had taken business away from them. Do you remember? I still am not quite understanding that. So he had said that he was doing pickups, is that right? And then you guys came in and then were taking that from him? Now, I truly don't know what the answer is, but I want to also make sure that we're not doing that, right? Like, we're not taking away from a Caldwell business as well.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Register. So that was referring to a service that we provided last year in downtown Boise, from downtown to the Boise State Stadium. It was a service that previously had been paid for by the Downtown Business Association, which is a private sector organization, to the Caldwell Transportation Company to provide. They, the Downtown Business Association, not us, made a decision not to do that anymore. And we were asked by them and by the city, could we provide any of that service, and if so, what? And we said, well, you can't pay us for it, that's not allowed. We could provide some service, and here's how we might do it. And we tried that. Although I'm sorry that they lost their business, the business that the Downtown Business Association used to contract with them to do, it was not our decision not to let that contract. It was only after they decided not to let that contract that we were asked to come and try. I've made a commitment not to provide that service this year, regardless, and they've moved on and we've moved on. I believe the Caldwell Transportation Company has also moved on. They've sold all of their school buses to a national firm, and they're continuing to do coach charter, which I think is a great service for them, and I really support them in moving forward with that. But,
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we're not,
but this has nothing to do with that.
Okay, all right. And then the only other thing I wanted to sort of clear up as far as the conflict, that's not a conflict, but you are the chairman, so you vote, right, on that board, or?
Yes, me along with all the other board members.
But you were going to talk about Counselor Stodic, but he doesn't vote, right?
He is a board member, so Elaine can correct me if I'm wrong, he does vote at those board meetings.
Not the executive board, just the regular board.
Yeah,
There's the executive board and the regular board, and the executive board makes recommendations to the regular board on that, so. So the final decision would be with the regular board, correct?
yes, yes.
But is that an assignment that he has as a counselor here, or?
Yes,
Okay, so
correct.
it's not like
Yeah.
like in his personal life?
Yeah,
It's
correct.
Okay,
Similar to, as if I was a mayor, I would not be on the board, so very similar to, that's why I'm assigned to the.
And Mr. Mayor,
the board.
Councilmember Register, as I understand the conflict of interest laws, having served as city council for many years, if there's no financial benefit, there's no conflict.
I
According to
realize,
state law, that doesn't
Right.
mean that there's not
I
a,
know what the state law says. I think that, obviously, that's there for a reason. Sometimes I think it's a little broad, because I think we do have things that, benefit people, is like, let's say you have somebody who works for an organization where the city may give money as a donation or help, or Urban Renewal gives money, and then, it benefits that person in their political career, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
So there are benefits somewhere
sure.
that's kind of in these wide, broad places.
Yeah.
So I don't like to always take stuff back to a code and go, well, the code says, because it just
Yeah.
seems so impersonal sometimes. But I understand what we're saying. I just wanted to clear up, because he had started talking
Sure.
about his role, so I just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page, just knowing who does what, and take it for what it is.
And, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, if I might add, I think there's a perception that if you decide to fund this service, that somehow it benefits Valley Regional Transit. I would say to you, actually, it's my very strong opinion that it doesn't benefit us, it benefits the citizens of this valley. If you don't fund it, if you do fund it, we'll continue in existence, we'll continue to get the federal, be this federal recipient of funds in this region. Where it will hurt us, if you will, and/or benefit us, if you will, is that we'll be able to better meet our mission. Our mission is to serve the people of this valley.
Councilor Stodic?
I just wanted to clear the air a little bit on the Caldwell Transportation Company. They did lose $31,000 on that project of supplying service to VSU. And the VRTs supplied free bus service to them, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Stodic, so I guess first of all, I would say the contract that they asked for would have been $31,000. My understanding of how contracts work is that they would have had a certain cost and they would have made a certain profit on that. I don't know what the profit would have been of that $31,000, but some portion of it. I would also tell you that it was more than what they had asked for or contracted for in the past, and as I understood it, the Business Association made a business decision that they were not going to fund it anymore because it was over the amount they felt comfortable doing. When you say we provided it for free, the rides were free, just as the rides on Caldwell Transportation were free. While Downtown Business Association didn't pay us, many of their members did by advertising, which was the way that we provided the funding to actually provide the service.
Well, that's where the rub came in, because your ERT didn't ask them whether they had a private business supply the service the previous year?
I did not, you're right. We now have adopted a policy that, or we will at this next meeting, that says that we will do that going forward. was my first year on the job. If I made that mistake, I've already said I apologize for it.
Well, to me, that was
But I
convenient.
did follow the law. We got it approved by the Federal Transit Administration that what we did was absolutely comporting with the law and how we should do it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying whose fault it was, but it was a convenient question that wasn't asked because federal law forbids any federal funds to take place of private funds, and they did lose the $31,000 plus, and because the question wasn't
The
asked.
Federal Transit Administration was aware of that, and they ruled that what we did was allowed. I can tell you that, or I would never have gone forward.
Okay, I don't see any more green lights, so, great,
Thank
thank
you.
you. So,
I guess
real quick, I know you'd asked, so we're not, because we'd have to take both sides, the testimony and that, but we could, it sounds like there are some, if you are a Caldwell resident that does with the public transportation, do you mind giving a wave just so we confirm that? Okay, so we do have a few in the audience that are on that, so
Thank
just
you.
wanted to confirm that, so.
And just a reminder, if you do put it in the budget to begin with, we can continue this conversation until your budget hearing, and I can get you the information to help inform it in a better way if that's helpful.
Okay, excellent, thank you so much, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Elaine, appreciate you being here and your staff as well, and those others, those other interested citizens, thank you so much. Okay, I think next is to the city attorney, is that correct? Mr. Hilty. And just as Mr. Hilty's getting prepared, just for transparency, I did send an email out earlier today to the city council in regards to again, the council does approve the budget that the mayor presents and we work through, and so as part of my recommendation is to go with your recommendation. I know that you'd put together, we'd met recently, no decision was made, but in executive sessions, we were able to gather and discuss matters of a private nature that allowed by state codes. We did discuss that and appreciate the work that you and your firm put together to present that, and I am in full support of that, moving forward with that. Looking at an in-house attorney fully in the future, but working steadily and slowly into that process to make sure we do it right. And so I'm sure you'll go over the details of that proposal, but again, just for full disclosure, I did email the council earlier today, just stating my support of that proposal and desire for that to move forward in that regard. So with that, we'll throw it over to you and you can go over all the details.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council, and thank you for finding some room for me on this issue tonight. I am sensitive to your time tonight. I'm going to move quickly through this. Part of that is also in recognition that you've received some letters from me outlining kind of what our proposal is, and we had a relatively recent meeting just upstairs where this was discussed. So I'll probably just move through the proposal quickly for context and then certainly stand for any questions that you have. What has come, I think, up this spring that was different, a desire for a different level of service than what you've had in the past was really two things. One was to find a way to get an attorney fully dedicated to Caldwell work. All the rest of the attorneys that have worked for Caldwell over the years, we all have private practices, and I think you knew that. But that we thought was a reasonable request, and so we've proposed that. The second one was office hours in Caldwell and specifically in City Hall, which we also think is a reasonable request. But these were two things that we hadn't done in the past, that when we initially made our budget proposal, we hadn't proposed to do, but as we've discussed it this spring, those two things have been worked into what is the most recent proposal, which I think was sent to you in a letter dated, well, I know it was, June 24. And so really, my comments tonight are going to be along the lines of what's proposed there. With respect to a new attorney, my firm would hire an employee, so it would be an employee hired and working for and paid for entirely by my firm. That new attorney would be dedicated full-time to work on our City of Caldwell client, and to start about October 1st, which of course is the first of the fiscal year. So assuming that this proposal is acceptable, we would then start the hiring process. And again, whether we can hit that date or not is going to depend on kind of who the successful candidate is and when they're available. With office hours, the proposal then is starting October 1st, regardless of whether that associate has been hired. My firm, with existing attorneys, me included, would commit to 2 days a week of office hours at City Hall. And that is in addition to approximately, well, I guess it's at least 3 days a week, probably, for Taylor, minimum 3 days a week, that Taylor's currently spending primarily at the police department. As soon as that associate is hired, which we would anticipate hopefully being around the 1st of October, we would bump that to 3 days a week. Office hours, we would then work to increase that time during the course of the fiscal year. And I think, as I had mentioned to you before, we're going to be bringing on somebody new, somebody that may not have significant municipal experience, and we're going to need to supervise them for a period of time. The last 2 municipal hires that we made in my firm were Taylor, and before her, Doug Waterman. Both of them worked out great. We've got an idea of the qualities that we're looking for. We're optimistic, but there's risk anytime you hire a new employee. And my firm will be taking that risk. And so if instead of increasing from 3 to 5 days a week, we may be terminating somebody's employment and starting over. And that's really the reason for that progression. We need to have some in-house training time there. Nonetheless, we would have 3 days a week in addition to Taylor's time, starting at the beginning of the fiscal, starting when that person was hired, hopefully at the beginning of the fiscal year. We also have, as I've mentioned before, a municipal paralegal that we plan on utilizing as well to kind of help carry the load. There are many things that we do for the city that could be handled at that level. We think that this is something that'll help as well. These elements are going to result in an increased level of service for the city. That's I think, one of the objectives. The other objective is that it is a reasonable first step as the city continues to look at going in-house. And it sounds like, based on our discussions, that going in-house could mean one of 2 things in the future. It might mean that you have a traditional in-house legal department like other cities do. Boise has one, Meridian has one. It could also mean that you've got effectively an in-house department that is run through my office, and then we provide coverage and backup and training and some of those types of things for the city. But I think this is a very good first step. We'll see how it goes during the course of this fiscal year. If we're having success, I think we continue down the path next year if that's the desire of the council. But there's risk anytime that you're changing your format, and we think it makes sense to go slow toward an ultimate goal. On the budget side of it, this was also outlined in the letter. It would be that, and as you know, we divide our services into routine legal services, general retainer services. That would be at $36,000 a month. Basically, that is the $32,000 we originally proposed, and then in adding a new attorney, we bumped it by $4,000, which is less than half of what that attorney is going to cost us. Obviously, that attorney will be to take on some of the burden, and so there will be some work shared there. But we think that's the right number to kind of split with the city, if you will. Happy to review that in 6 months as well. We'll have some data at that point. We'll have somebody that we know how they're doing and where they're at. And frankly, if they're taking on more of the work than we would anticipate, there can be an adjustment to that. So happy to bake that into any sort of contract, agreement, or understanding. And then for the additional legal services which aren't covered in the routine services, primarily that's litigation. Sometimes there are other odd projects that go beyond what we could forecast as routine. We would provide those services for $200 per hour. My firm is committed to the city. We've been here a long time. We're very fond of the city. That said, we recognize we serve at the pleasure of the mayor and council. As the city grows, I think it's a logical conversation to have about how and when and if you go in-house. We're not offended by that. We want to be partners with the city as that goes forward. We think this gives us a good way to gather some data on, at least initially, what that could look like and what an expansion of that might look like in the future. My hope tonight is that you'll find this acceptable. I know it's not on here for an action item. What I would propose to do, Mayor, is present a contract that outlines this legal services that I've discussed for council action at the August 6th meeting. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Thank you so much. Councilor Stoddard. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I think one of the biggest concerns we had last time was, that we felt we needed with in-house service because of, all the transactions that the city has. And I think one of the biggest concerns we had is getting somebody experienced that, could fill that position like you folks have. And in my prior life in the ag industry and working at a corporate office up in Boise, I had a few contacts, and I did contact some people that I trust fully. And there are a couple of folks that have some experience in city legal matters that did get back to me. And I think that, again, we're looking at cost here relative to taxpayers, and I think we ought to at least look at those two people, their resumes, and see what kind of program they might have for us versus what you're presenting, just so we can see the differences in cost.
Yeah. I think one important thing to note too is the law firm is an appointed position, and they are appointed through September 30th of 2026. So their reappointment is not up, so that would probably be more appropriate at that time to look into that. Because they are appointed, the council did appoint them through September 30th of 2026. And Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong on those dates. So maybe more appropriate look at something like that at that point. Councilor Register?
I have a question. That's not so much about the finances. But if this goes through and you hire somebody, does the council or the city have any say on who that is?
I thought about that, Councilor Register, and so our typical process is to post an ad and get resumes, and if we know of people potentially interested, to Councilor Stoddick's point, we reach out to them directly. So we've kind of done a combination of those things, and then interview. And to me, that's where it might make sense for there to be a councilman, the mayor maybe, or the mayor and a council member. I don't think we could convene the entire council. And ultimately, we'd have to retain the right to make that decision. But the short answer is, yeah, if there's a way for the city council, or, some representation, I guess, from the council in that process, we would be comfortable with that.
Well, the reason I ask is I know that there's a smaller pool of attorneys that do this kind of work, and I've heard some names floating around, and there's a couple where I thought they, just based on past history with a couple of cities that I know of and a couple of different, I don't want to get into it too much, otherwise it's going to give it away. I don't want to say their names, but I don't think they would be good fits here, is what I'm getting at. So those are I want to make sure that we're not stepping into something where you hire somebody who's, you know what I mean, who would be.
I know exactly what you mean, and we have absolutely the same interest, and we have our ear to the ground a little bit about it. We understand who's out there in the municipal attorney world as well.
And then I think the only other thing that we talked about that I thought was really important was that when these contracts are being made with whoever, like the contract with Tillian, right, that the council is able to talk to that attorney about some of those things before those contracts are signed, sealed, and delivered with them, so we don't run into another problem like with parking passes or whatever, that, you know what I mean, like where we're throwing that out for a council in 10 years from now or whatever and saying, well, back then they said it was okay, you know what I mean, like those kinds of things were the only concerns that I have. But I do appreciate that after those concerns about responsiveness and stuff like that were brought up, that it seems to be much, much better, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along those same lines, and I wouldn't expect you to name names, this discussion has been fairly public. Do you have people approaching you, or do you know of people that might be interested?
I don't.
Okay.
We haven't yet.
You, in essence, said the worst-case scenario, the person doesn't work out and we got to go back to square one. Give me the best-case scenario in your mind. If day one you hire somebody and they're here 3 days a week, what would you believe to be a best-case scenario for that person being down here 5 days a week, short of those times they have to go to your office for a meeting or something? Let's say you got someone with experience. What would you expect that to be, Mr. Schulte?
Yeah, it would have to be someone with experience, which is going to be a higher dollar figure out of the gate, but very well could be worth it. I would think if we had the right person and that we're working well with and have developed a high level of trust with, within within certainly 6 months, we could be up to 5 days a week.
And then I think it goes without saying, because you stated who you hire will be dedicated to the city of Caldwell. So even if those 2 days a week that they're at your office, would they be accessible to us within reason? I mean, we'd be able to reach out via email or cell phone to that individual first, I would think, because it would make sense to run everything through one individual rather than this being our go-to person 3 days a week, and then the day that person isn't here, I'm calling Taylor, and this person should be in the loop first, I would think. Is that your idea? Even when they're in your office, those 2 days a week, they're at our disposal?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Counselor Allgood.
Yeah, whole bunch of questions here. I like your proposal. I think it's a good first step. I think we're transitioning, and I believe that transition should take some time. So I like that idea. Couple things. So would a person here need any office assistance? Would we be talking as a receptionist, assistant, something like that? Would that be necessary as we transitioned into this?
Councilor Allgood, I think the answer is no. We're not planning on that. Now, there would be some support needed, but I think that could be provided remotely through our office, if that makes sense. In terms of support staff, what I've envisioned is, a computer connection that wouldn't connect them to the city's system. It would connect them to our system. So our form bank, our emails, our internal communication, they would have ready access to our office staff and paralegals as they needed that. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
And kind of along the same lines as Councilor Williams, having that central point, kind of where central point, if we had a question and you spoke about your paralegal that would have a lot of ability to answer a lot of that stuff, there would still, as people in the city who needed contact, we wouldn't have to shop. There would be a central point, and it'd kind of go from there, kind of situation.
Yeah, correct. And certainly some of these things are things we're going to learn, right, as we get into this, particularly about office staff and support. But yeah, I think having a central point of communication, at least initially, and let me tell you what I mean by that. We've got larger projects that we're working on, for example, with your public works department at different ongoing types of things. And I've been involved in that. And so your staff would know, to reach out to me because we have an ongoing communication and we have an ongoing project. But as new things come up, having some sort of initial point of contact and tracking on that is something that we would implement between this new attorney and the paralegal.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep bugging you here.
Yeah,
And this is
absolutely.
probably not a discussion for this particular subject, but having some experience there, I'm kind of questioning why we have an attorney servicing the police department 3 days a week. What's going on that we would need an attorney in the police department 3 days a week? I have some concerns there. Is that going towards our regular time? Is that extra time?
Yeah, the vast majority, and Taylor can answer it obviously better than I can, the vast majority of that is covered under the general retainer.
Okay.
If
That just, I hope we don't need that much legal advice, but I don't know what's going on, so I'm not going to weigh in on that. But I was just concerned where that was hitting our budget.
Yeah, it's within the general retainer, and you've seen some bumps in the general retainer over the last couple of years. I'd encourage you to talk to Chief Rex and Taylor.
Yeah.
They'll meet with you on that and kind of talk about how that goes.
Thank you.
Counselor Doty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, clearly I support moving to in-house counsel. I don't think that's any secret. What I believe I tried to do is listen to the comments from the council, and then me and Mr. Hilty met about this hybrid model, so to speak, if that's the name we're going to give it. And so your explanation about the hours in office, clearly I want as many hours in the office as possible. I don't see that as unreasonable under the same concept as we talked about with clearly if they have more experience and more time and they're catching on more quickly, depending on who you hire, then they move in even more quickly. We certainly, it was great to hear that we can still reach out to them. I do think that they should be the source that we go to. I think that's how some of the emails and phone calls get lost is who are we going to and when are we going and who should we talk to on what? And if everything is funneled through one channel, I think it makes it a lot easier to keep track. as well as dates when we expect a response back, depending on how pressing the issue is. So I certainly am glad that we're headed this direction, and I support us moving forward.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other green lights, so I think that's it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Unless I hear differently, I will put a contract together along the lines we've discussed, and you'll have it to review prior to your August 6th meeting.
Perfect. Sounds
All
great.
right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Hilty. What's next, Raylene? You?
So if you look, I don't have any PowerPoints tonight because I just want to give you guys some updates and go through any outstanding items that I want to make sure that we get covered before the budget hearing on August 20th. So some of these are already updated within the online budget book, but on August 1st, a new budget book will be coming out with the final numbers. Some of these are still works in progress until August 1st. So the first thing I want to talk about is COLA. As you know, I talked about our health insurance costs going up. We had a health trust meeting last week. It kind of gave us our actuary estimate of a 9.5% increase. Now that doesn't directly increase premiums 9.5%. That's just a total overall total claims cost is going up 9.5%. So we're kind of looking at different options with that. Some of those options are to reduce the COLA from the 4% that I have budgeted down to 3.2 or somewhere within that range. The 3.2 is really the minimum that we want to, that myself and the mayor kind of discussed, and the reason for that is that was what CPI was when I did pull it. So we're looking at that. With the, we're also, some of those costs obviously will go on to the employee premium. So once we have those finalized, we will bring those to you, but until then. With the COLA, I know we talked a lot about performance-based increases. The timing is just, as you know, just really tight right now with all the turnaround, and so that's not going to be something that's going to be possible right now. We just haven't got all the evaluations in, and so at this point in time, there's not enough time for myself to calculate that and have a good number within that 3.2. So that is something that we can definitely bring for City Council next year within the budget on the performance base, but after talking to Shelley, the HR director, as well as a lot of it lies with police and fire evaluations and just not having the time to get those completed, so.
And I think too, if I can just kind of add on to that, I know Shelley and her crew have been working tirelessly trying to get through that. There's a lot that goes into that. You got to make sure that it's, not biased one way or the other, that you're not somehow favoring this group and not that. And so there's so much that goes into it and then can open you up to litigation, things of that nature. If somebody feels, well, they received this higher amount because they like them better than me, or whatever it may be. And so we wish it was much simpler than that, to just kind of wave a wand and say, okay, we're going to do this. And if you're a gold star, you get this percentage. If you're a bronze star, you only get this. But there's so much that goes into it to make sure that, with your evaluations, that they're, again, unbiased questions, just looking at, how is this individual performing? It sounds simple, but it gets very, very detailed when you get into our attorneys left, but to the legal weeds of it. And so just felt, again, we want to do it definitely for next year, but just felt to try to get it done this year could open us up to possible litigation and other issues that could come back and haunt us and cost us significantly. So the proposal is, again, move forward with the coalition as is being recommended, and coming back next year with that honed in, dialed in, airtight, ready to go to start doing those performance evaluations or employee bonuses based on performance based on that, which I think is key to our wonderful employees that go above and beyond on that, but just felt that we needed that additional time to make sure it's done the right way. So anyway, sorry, just wanted to throw that in there.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment on that too? So I appreciate that with the comments about the COLA, and then you mentioned bonus too, which are two separate things. But that would be a great idea if we could, if, once it does get settled and we figure it out, that if tax revenues do come in or money is available, that we do look at it, still rewarding those that did get the exceptional evaluation, even if we're a little pressed on time this year. I'd still like us to consider that.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe even like get a 6-month review. We could do something like that too. We wouldn't have to wait for the full budget year. So, no, I appreciate that. Okay, Raylan.
As to other things that are in process with pay, we're still looking at the cost for the Spanish speaker certificate pay. That's currently not built into the budget. Matt's currently just running those numbers currently. So we're looking at different amounts, and so that will be in the final budget. However, right now I don't have those amounts for you. The other part is, I talked about the water fund, second round of the class and comp. That is being factored into the budget. It's actually already in there for the CDL pay to make it to where water is in comparison to wastewater and streets with CDL. Right now, for CDLs, they're about $2 less than all the other departments just because we didn't have enough class and comp. So we are going forward with that. There's also other discussions underway in pay that I just want to make you aware of, though they are not final currently. I met with Ashley and Rob today about a water restructuring to move different, make water department similar to wastewater in job class and job title. And so that is something that we're still calculating cost on and looking to see if we can do this fiscal year. Rob also emailed me about some public works increases, and then within the engineering department, and then the fire deputy chiefs that we're having a discussion actually tomorrow to talk about with the fire chief. So just want to give you an update on those, as those could be potential in the budget as well. Fire union negotiations is still underway. We don't have a next date set, but it did get delayed as we're still looking at pay and trying to figure out the best option for them. Some of the other changes, I finally got the numbers for iCrimp. So I know we talked about how in the first presentation I had about $700,000 budgeted. We actually got the final estimate, it's going to be $754,000. So that's a 30% increase from last year, and last year we had a 25% increase. So it's definitely increased, it's almost doubled from 2 years ago. So that's something that's spread out among all the departments, but just want to give you an update that that is now budgeted within the current budget. Property tax, though, I haven't got the final numbers yet, but with property tax in the discussions about police, the mayor and I talked about looking at taking the additional foregone to max out at the 8%. This is really going to be required to fund the positions that police has requested. So that is something that we are going to look to you to say yes or no on tonight about taking the property tax and then the additional foregone. So some other changes, there's been a little bit of reorganization. So within finance, we moved the CDBG specialist, which 10% of that position was paid out of finance, to planning and zoning. And so that freed up funding for the part-time position. So you'll actually see a decrease in finance because of that. In addition, that consultant costs of $20,000 got moved to P&Z. In the capital fund, the strategic plan was removed. I know there was a lot of discussion about that. It's something that we'll look to revisit in future years. There's just, the funding priorities are much higher in other departments right now. So, in human resources, we removed the HR senior position, and then also the reclass was done. However, no additional pay was needed, and so we did remove that as well from the Human Resource Department. There's been several discussions or changes within the mayor's office, and would you like to talk about those, or you want me to?
So in regards to like the chief of staff? Yeah, so the chief of staff has been removed this year. Do hope to revisit that again next year, see the possibility of bringing that in. But yes, that has been removed to free up additional funding for police, fire, all of those property tax-based positions on that. So that is not being requested this time. There is the one position, it does show as a new part-time position. It is currently existing. So the funding, really, there's no change in the funding on it. It's an intern that we've had this last year that we're trying to move that into more of a part-time position on that. So in that regards, and then potential of, I know there's some intern money within the HR department of maybe bringing in an intern for some of the summer next year in that regards. But the one, what appears to be a potential new half-time part position is actually just a transition from that intern over, so the funding does not change in that regards.
What's the position?
What's that?
What is the position?
So so what that position has been doing is within the community's specialist program, assisting with, like the 4th of July that we recently had, other events throughout the city, and just kind of assisting in the mayor's office for different activities, different events that's going on.
I also emailed you about this, but we are restructuring the community relations budgets outside of the mayors and city councils to have its own division. So still working with the mayor on those final numbers, but you'll see that update as well. In department-wide library, I made no changes. Parks and Rec, there's a couple things I made changes on. After talking with the mayor, we decided to combine all the graffiti lines within the current budget to the city hall budget. And I'm currently working on an informal RFQ for a contract to come before city council to get someone that's just dedicated to graffiti removal. I'm also working with CPD for a process, and the city clerk for a process, so that citizens can submit reports of graffiti online. So NAMPA currently has that, and so we're looking to kind of copy that process. I also removed the admin assistant from the Parks and Rec budget. However, I did add an additional park maintenance specialist and then reduce the labor services budget. So there's a little bit of shift within there just because of hearing the comments from city council. So with golf, I ended up speaking with Ken Wheeler, the superintendent, and he had quite a few requests, and so we added those into the golf budget, which are reflected online. But I did remove the golf manager, and then we added a project which is resurfacing of the cart paths that was requested by the Parks and Rec director. In cemetery, there's been a couple of new issues, but we added a veterans memorial and the niche walls, which are currently budgeted in fiscal year '24, as they won't be installed right away. We did add them to the '25 budget as part of, and this is in the cemetery capital fund, as some of the capital fund this year was used for an ADA ramp. CEC, there was no budget changes currently. However, do you want to talk about the reorg?
For which one?
The CEC and the...
Oh, for CEC Caldwell Event Center. Yes, so kind of, with, as I think everyone is aware, the Parks and Rec director has submitted her resignation. Last day will be next week. And so we looked at that. With any change, it's good to look and see how everything's functioning in there. What can we do better in that regards? And so currently, facilities were under Parks and Recreation. As you know, we did propose that one position of a facilities and building director, which is not in the budget anymore. That has been removed. And so facilities would have gone with that. And so we looked to see where is it still best in Parks and Rec? Is there a better area for that to be, and felt that there is a better location for that. And so, as you're aware, Juan, who runs the Caldwell Event Center, does an amazing job. So he already does that facility, and so felt that it would align best under him. And so they will report to that facilities will report to Juan, and then Juan will ultimately report to the Public Works Director, Mr. McDonald, who's here this evening. So we'll remove that from the Parks and Rec chain, I guess you could say, and will fall under Public Works, and then Juan will be there, and then that's who Larry and his crew would report to, would be that. So it just seemed to be a better fit in that regards, and And I spoke with Mr. McDonald on that and was more than willing to take that on. Juan's a pretty easy employee to get along with, and he just gets in and gets the job done. So appreciate Rob stepping up for that. And Juan I think he's excited for that change and that challenge to come his way. And make sure that he's not burnt out. As you know, he's works very hard. There's a lot going on out there, and he felt comfortable in taking that on and being able to have that. Especially, like I said, he already does take care of the largest facility that we have in the city. So those others would just fall in line under him in that regards.
With building, we removed both the building and facility director and removed the safety manager. So those are two positions. And then facilities, we didn't have any changes. In economic development, we did add $20,000 to the economic development budget for the remodel of additional offices at the airport building. And this is where Ophelia sits currently, and it's kind of just behind a wall and it's open, there's no door, and so we're looking to kind of enclose that so she has a space. IT, we had no changes. I already talked about the changes with P&Z. And then for police and fire, so police, we moved the mounted unit into its own line and moved $20,000 from training to this mounted unit. I worked with the deputy chief on that. We added 1 sergeant, 2 police officers, 1 admin assistant, 1 community service officer, and 1 accounting specialist that would be split between police and fire. However, with this and within the discussion, due to not receiving revenue for the SRO contract with Caldwell, police would be required to keep we're still looking at it, either 4 or 5 of those SRO positions vacant for the entire year, unless the Caldwell revenue changed. So we're keeping them available, but they would have to keep them vacant. For fire, we made some adjustments into the operating with moving things around. Currently, the fire chief has asked that the contract with the training in Nampa, that he would much rather pay for the training division chief. So we're reallocating that $150,000 from operating to a position for a full-time. And so those are kind of all the changes within the discussion. But if you have any other discussion or like any more information, I'd be happy to talk about it.
Very good. Counselor Allgood.
You're going to regret that. I have a whole list.
But we do have one over here, so go ahead.
So when you said a 9.5% increase, that is in exactly what?
So it's the total cost of the health insurance to run the health trust plan. So we're just over $3 million, so it'd be a 9.5% increase in that $3 million, which then that increase would be split between employees and the employer position, employer cost. And so with the reduction of the CEC, the COLA, it gives us, if we were to go all the way to the 3.2, gives us about $175,000 to spend within all the funds. However, we haven't got the final number, so all I know is the percent. I don't know that final number yet. And so, because I'm waiting on the letter from our health consultant, which he hasn't sent it to me yet. He has it. I do not have it, unfortunately. And so, once I have that final number, it's a balance to figure out where that ends.
And do you have the numbers on workman's comp yet? Is it going up similarly, or where are we at on that?
So workman's comp, I have from January what Shelley sent me, so it's in every 5 years. And it's not even, it's like actually, January. So those and some of them are increasing and some of them are decreasing because the claims are still, they're still occurring, so.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, go right ahead, keep going.
Do
we have accurate numbers from the county yet? Are you working on numbers you're confident in?
Yes, so so when I presented the property tax, it was just over $2 million. Those are preliminary numbers from the county, and so I don't see those changing too much.
Okay. And I'm mostly, as we talk about money, I'm mostly interested in general fund money, because that's the money that supports police and fire. So, the sheriff charges us for dispatch fees, roughly, I think, $325,000 this year.
That's correct.
And that initially kicked off as just charging the police department. But our fire department has gotten so busy, they use a lot of dispatch as well. And so I'm wondering if there's a way we can share that cost between police and fire, rather than just come out of police budgets. And just a little bit of history. We have gotten franchise fees from Idaho Power for years. And years ago, the police department got that franchise fee. During negotiations years ago, fire department shared that. It was a 50-50 split with franchise fees. We're about $400,000 now.
Yeah.
My question is, could we cover those dispatch costs with franchise fees and separate that out of both departments' budgets so that they were budgeting, that number wouldn't affect either department's budget, if that's possible, or maybe it's apples and oranges, I don't know.
I mean, we can definitely do that. It's kind of, I could put that within City Hall's essentially, The only difference is, so if we did that, whatever revenue City Hall, the general fund, City Hall, that's not police and fire, that goes back to the general fund balance, where police and fire get to keep their fund balance. And so that's where the difference would be. So if we're giving $200,000 to police and $200,000 to fire, and we lump it all together, now that money is just going to stay in the general fund instead of going into police and fire's fund balance.
So either way, it would take money. I mean, if you split it between police and fire, or did some percentage between police and fire, I don't see it being equal.
No.
But there would be some split. And I wasn't talking about putting the money in City Hall. I would leave the money with police and fire.
And I can do it either way. I can have discussions with both chiefs and see if we can come up with a resolution for that.
Yeah, because if I understand it right, that dispatch number will continue to go up, and we need to make plans for how we're going to deal with that.
And I will say, myself and one of the W chiefs of fire had a discussion with Canyon County Sheriff about adding, so not reducing police's costs, but adding additional costs for fire for dispatching services. I haven't seen a contract come through yet. I know it was just in talks this summer, about a month ago. So that's something I think that Canyon County is looking at, to start charging both departments.
And that will probably be a big number.
So,
Okay, I just kind of wanted to stay on track with that. And then, regarding facilities and moving under WAN, we had a discussion last budget hearing about, we have maintenance of this building and they take care of it, and maintenance of this building and they take care of it. And it seemed, I know years ago when there was an issue with the police department, I contacted Lieutenant Wright. Lieutenant Wright opened his master file, took care of it, and we didn't contact Parks Department or somebody else. We did it on our own situation. And so I think as we're growing as a city, as we discussed earlier, we need a more organized plan for how we're taking care of facilities. And that brings me to Larry. Larry does a lot of that already, but he does not have the title, the authority, or the pay to be what he's doing. I think we need to reclassify Larry, and I believe Councilor Doty has some thoughts on that. We need to do something with Larry to make it a more organized way of accomplishing facilities.
and just to comment on that, one of the things, what's interesting is in this last year, in 2023, at the end of 2023, we approved a contract for a facilities work order tracking system where everybody could use, and I will say that has yet to be implemented. And so I think that will help with some of that process, but I don't know the status of when it will be implemented, so.
And just two more quick things and I'll
Yep,
shut up.
Yep.
Mounted unit, I was under the understanding that wasn't going to take any tax dollars.
I just know that I talked to Deputy Chief and he requested the 20,000. I will say that tax dollars are being used for it currently.
Okay, well, that was not my intention. And then, police and fire overtime, are we seeing a large increase, decrease? Where are we at there?
There is definitely a significant increase. I will say we are holding the budget the same because part of the increase, is there's not been a lot of, the chief, I don't want to talk about chief operations, but the discussions I had with Captain Rosen is that essentially any overtime shift is approved. And so that's something that really, I put it on the chief and the captain to say, hey, you need to live within this budget or you're using salary savings. And currently they're over budget significantly. So.
But, okay, I'll shut up. Thank you.
You're good, no problem at all. Councilor Doty.
Before I get into my list, Counselor Allgood, so where are they pulling the money from salary savings then?
From
Okay,
salary savings.
So they're not asking for money yet?
That is correct.
Hopefully, and won't, and they'll stay within that, right? So, Mr. Mayor, obviously, these are suggestions, and I'd like you to consider them. I'm hopeful about is some of these that I'm going to mention, just bear with me because I didn't know that some of these were cut. I will mention the ones that are cut. My goal was to get the impact fees back, so to speak, and I get it's not apples to apples, it's apples to oranges, and some of mine is out of the general fund, and some are out of many different funds, but I'd just like you to consider the following, and it gets us to about 1.5 million in savings, especially if we're going to take the foregone, and I'll buzz through them really quickly, hopefully faster than Councilor Allgood, but we'll see, because some are really simple. I think we just bought a lawnmower, so just purchasing one this year instead of two and kicking the next one down so that they're not all purchased at the same time would be a great idea. The savings on that's $152,000. You already talked about the community outreach assistant. It's already being absorbed within the budget at $24,000. It looks like the safety position has been cut by somebody.
Yes.
Again, I'll just move through quickly, but that's great. That's $147,289 in savings, so to speak. I mean, it hasn't been spent, but it's still, you get what I'm saying, I think. The Director of Building Facilities, I would say I would support Councilor Allgood that we get Larry some help and cut that Director of Building Facilities, which is $172,000 plus. Let Juan give it a shot and see where we're at and at least get a process in place, reevaluate. I'm not saying that certainly is something that needs to be within a 5-year plan. I think we're getting so many facilities, but I appreciate the restructuring, and let's try and get something in order, the software, to see if it's even going to work. Let's get a process in place first. So, PR admin assistant, there are already enough assistants, I think, at Parks and Rec, and that would save $77,000. I'm not sure where you're going to end up on VRT. If we keep it the same, it saves us $142,000. These are round numbers. Sorry, Chief, but I don't think it's the time for the fire dog. I'm in the fire negotiations. We need we need personnel, and we need money for pay. The dog is $20,000 plus. As we know, the vet bills, the food, the person that's going to handle the dog. So I think, again, it can be in a plan that's further down the road. I've made a few calls, 2 calls to other areas asking about information about, I'll just call it a fire dog. And I just don't think the return on our investment, this is the time to take on another expense with a fire dog. I appreciate the golf manager, chief of staff, HR specialist, senior. I don't even know if I need to go over all those numbers. The community outreach being cut from $126,000 to $64,000. And then the one thing I would ask is move, this is going to sound really weird, but is the the Public Works Director still out there? Is that we move the intersection of Linden and Cleveland out into the 5-year plan further out. It is currently in their budget to replace that this year, and the reason why is that will bring us to $1.7 million in savings, but I would like to add a building maintenance person or position to help Larry, and I would like to commit $100,000 to graffiti removal. And I think if that comes out of streets, then that would, if we just push one intersection on to the next year's budget, that would give us money. I think we need to take, instead of the patching and just spending a couple thousand here or there, that we really take a proactive approach at getting rid of our graffiti. And of course, I'll reiterate, I think that we need to wait on the gym space. I think people working, we've heard testimony from people here that the conditions, the working conditions in our Public Works building are bad. And I just think that we should hold off on that gym equipment and move those people, spend that money on some office equipment and get those folks out of that basement area that are very poor working conditions. They're both beneficial to our employees. However, I think our employees need a better working condition than in the basement of a wet building. So I'd appreciate that. With that, total savings is 1.5, a little over $1.5 million. And so I would appreciate you considering those. If you want a list of those, I can certainly get those to you. Some of them are already accomplished, so you're halfway there, I would say. And I would also like us to start looking at, when we see the numbers come from, well, it's Raylan's office or whoever sends us the numbers with the checkbook, so to speak. I'm seeing charges like where the mayor's staff is out somewhere and charging $6 here, $12 here. I'm guessing it's for lunch or coffee and putting informational sharing there. I have a real problem with local per diem. And I think that employees shouldn't just go around spending money on their lunch or coffee if they're sharing information with other folks. I don't think it's a common practice in most cities, because where do we cut it off? If it's a street guy that's working on the streets and working hard for us, and he takes his lunch break and shares information with someone, can he use his city credit card to purchase his lunch or his coffee? And so I think we get into a really slippery slope as to when we're doing local per diem reimbursement, with some exceptions that our executives may have a different policy on that. But when we start choosing which employees can do that and which ones can't, I think that creates a very slippery slope.
Okay.
See, I didn't time it, but not too bad, right?
Very good. And I know, so we have moved some staff from, so nobody's in the basement at the old city hall, but Ashley's crew is over at the 621 building on that. I don't believe there's any issues, but we could definitely talk about that. But I know that we have moved some staff from there over to this building. So the crew that's left over at 621 is Ashley's crew with the water. The goal is to hopefully get them out to actually the water department someday, get a new building out there. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit down the road, but to get them out there with that. So those are the only individuals left out in that building, and Rob as well, Rob McDonald, if I'm not mistaken. So, and Bruce, sorry Bruce, didn't mean to leave you out, but we can definitely, there are issues out there with your employees that aren't happy with that, we can definitely look into it. But I know we have moved some over into this building, that part of Ray Lynn's crew that's over here, and I know that he's much happier, and also our CDBG as well. She's also much happier over here, not there. So, but
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So just one comment, I would still stick to that, though, that we should move those people. I think the gym space would hold them currently until either we get the third floor or whichever comes first, or the building built for water. But I just think that they're both important. I'm just placing one a priority over the other.
yeah, and they definitely are. They would not fit for sure in that room. Not all of them. You could get a few, but
as many as we could legally and comfortably get. It's just my opinion.
okay. Yeah, no, I just want to make sure it's where we may be half of them, but probably not. And obviously, Ashley may want them together, not separated, but we can definitely look into that. So I do appreciate that. Councilor Williams, I think I saw your light on next. Then we'll
Thank you,
jump
Mr.
over to Councilor
Mayor.
Stoddard.
And obviously, we're finding all of this adds up, and so 30,000 here and 60,000 there. I would concur with Councilor Doty's assessment, and I want to say something else about the gym equipment and ask a question. Are we still reimbursing employees who go to the gym a certain number of days a week? Is that program still available?
So I can jump on that if you want. So we are not. So we stopped that in light of moving it in-house. So if we did take it away, I would ask that we at least go back to what we did offer the employees last year. That was taken away in this budget year to forward for the gym equipment. So if we do take that out, it would be my recommendation that we do allow for some money to go into that to get the employees back to what they used to have.
Mr. Mayor, just a comment,
Yeah.
but we do get a discount at the Y. City employees do.
I'm not sure, we may.
I'm a member at the Y, and I get a that's what they told
Yeah,
me.
so
by
the city
being a
used to
employee,
pay
so-
for like membership. If you went so many times a month, they
Yeah.
would pay for your membership. So we stopped that last year, accounting for the, hopeful for the equipment to be here for them to
I
work
just,
out.
yeah, I just want it to be known that I got one. I'm not sure.
Well, I just
How that
wanted to,
worked.
I want to add that fire and police have gyms in their facilities for good reason. Their jobs are physical, it's necessary for them to remain in shape, but even a lot of them choose not to use the in-house gym, and that's their prerogative. And I think if we were a Fortune 500 company and I was the owner of that company and I, out of the goodness of my heart, wanted to provide a gym for my employees, that'd be coming out of my pocket. I think using taxpayer dollars to give the mayor's staff a gym is
The
not the
entire
same.
city staff.
Are they not your staff?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
entire city staff, so.
So the point I'm trying to make is we're still using taxpayer dollars to do that. These aren't our dollars. These aren't the dollars that we're being magnanimous with our resources. We're using other people's resources, and I think that $75,000 or whatever it is that we're proposing could be better spent, and let those people that choose to go to the gym go to the gym. The other thing I wanted to ask about, and Mr. McDonald, I'm glad you're still here and your staff, because in my own research, looking at the $35,000 that is budgeted for the rate the pavement expert, maybe I wasn't paying attention, which is most likely, because I'm sure you told me this, but in my research I learned that funding is a lot more likely to come to us for projects if we have a study that is done. Now, I'd never heard that before, but it makes it more important for me to have that study, if we're able to use that study to procure funding from other sources. So, is that correct?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Williams. That is correct. We are probably the only large city in this entire area that does not rate our pavement, and we never have. And so it's something we wanted to implement. A lot of the process that is done is very technical, and so there are companies that specialize in that. It's something that could be done in-house, but there's a very large learning curve, and so hiring it out is much more efficient. But you are exactly correct. When you apply for federal funding for a road project, they want to know what those numbers are, because a lot of your funding is dependent on the condition of your roads, and so that's the information it gives you to qualify for federal funding.
Okay, and I understand Nampa gets loads of funding this way because of their project, and even smaller municipalities, and we're missing out on some of that, I would suspect.
Correct, and that is something that we want to correct. We
So-
want to take advantage of the funding that's available.
I think you just answered my question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, even though it's redundant. Is it still best then for us to spend the $35,000, or could you use potentially an intern, because you or your staff both are qualified, you have these stamps that a engineer has. If the work is done and it's an in-house study, it equally qualifies with the federal government for those grants. It doesn't have to be an outside study. Is there any way we could carve this down a little bit, or do you still believe this is the best route for us to go this year?
Councilman Williams, my opinion is that this is the best route to go with an outside consultant. It is possible to do it in-house, but like I said, engineering has a huge spectrum of disciplines, and we specialize in different disciplines, but I personally have never gone out and analyzed the road and gone through all of the technical process to number the road. And that doesn't mean I couldn't figure it out and go out and do it, but for the sake of consistency, a firm that does this on a regular basis, that has all the proper equipment, is able to go out and do it much quicker and get the information we need, and they can compile it into a nice report that we can use for applications.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to, appreciate that, I really do, but I'm moving on if you don't mind. I wanted to talk a little bit about the travel budget too within the city. How necessary is all of that travel budget? It seems like we've got a lot of other needs in-house. And if we're saving 30,000 here and 10,000 here and 70,000 here, is there any way we can pare down that travel budget in the city, Mr. Mayor?
I'm sure you can. So I know travel, it depends, each department obviously is a little bit different on what their travel is and for. I know I imagine for several departments, it's to maintain certain certifications, qualifications that they have in that regards where, they do need to go to some of those national conferences to continue to do their continuing education credits and things of that nature. So, and again, I don't want to speak for each department because everyone is a little bit unique and a little different, like in planning and zoning, to go to some of those national conferences, again, to continue with those continuing education credits. We had a great discussion recently with Raylene and Rochelle and appreciated that. And I know Rochelle was very, very poignant on it, and I appreciated that, when she's looking at those, that she's making sure that you are going to get more out of it than you pay for it. If you go to a conference and it's $3,000 or $4,000, we want to make sure that you are coming back with knowledge that will either save the city more than what was spent or add to your repertoire of what you have on that. And so I know that they're very, very aware of the conferences that they go to. So I think it can definitely always be pared back on that. But each department is so unique in what they do. Police is going to be much different of what they go to than engineering or planning and zoning or finance in that regard. So, but we can definitely that's where I'd want to talk to each of those, appointed officials, directors, and say, okay, here's the request. Look at your travel budget, make sure it falls in line with all of these, that you can say, yes, this is why we need to go to here, and this is the value we get from it. If there's others that aren't as valuable, cutting those, looking at those can always be looked at for sure.
So let's start with the corner office and lead by example. How much of your travel budget is used strictly by you, or does your staff use that? And how much of your travel budget would you be willing to give up for the sake of saving the taxpayers some money?
Yeah, so that is used for mostly for me. The main travels that I do are the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which is back in Washington, D.C. That is for the mayors throughout the country are invited to go and to attend that. That conference, we've been able to glean quite a bit on that. It gives the opportunity to meet with, some pretty powerful leaders throughout the country on that, to learn about grant programs, things of that nature, where, we're able to, have, the United States Attorney General come and speak to us and talk about, programs like for your police departments and things of that nature and grants in that regards, other conferences in that regards. But yes, if there's a desire from that to look at that and, make sure that, I feel that I do the same as that, look through these and make sure that they are, important to the city and that they're going to provide a benefit. Some of them, I feel like are important to create those contacts and those bonds as a mayor, with these entities, especially some of these federal agencies, things of that nature, that we can get some, significant, grants from them through those connections and things of that nature on that. But, there's other local ones that are pretty important. There's the Boise Metro Chamber puts on one every year up in Sun Valley for, leaders throughout the Treasure Valley, able to go up and, make those connections with other, leaders of our state, the governors there, the mayors from all the other cities. So those things are pretty important, but we can always look and, tone it down if that's the desire of the council to cut back on those.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I could just interrupt, one of the things that, as you heard us talk about with the P cards, we are changing our current travel policy pretty significantly when we implement the P cards, where it's, there's definitely more oversight on the travel and training budgets, because there's going to be more, I would say, additional documentation that hasn't necessarily been provided before. So where you have a training form that says, here's all the costs and this is what I actually spent before and after, and this training has to be signed off before you go, and then the expenditures have to be approved after. So it's kind of a dual process. So that is going to be coming here before you guys here soon.
And then finally, if I could, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I think I understood you when we began the evening, which seems like it was a long time ago. You were looking for some direction tonight with regard to the transportation request from Valley Regional Transit?
So this is our last budget workshop, And so the next time we will talk about the fiscal '25 budget will be at the public hearing, which will have the max budget amount. And at that point in time, you can definitely change it, but it would be only to reduce it, not to increase it. So this would be talks to, obviously, if I can make it to where on the budget hearing, there would be no changes, that's my goal, but obviously, that doesn't always happen.
It sounded like there was a large group of us up here that wanted to hold last year's number for VRT, and if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but if that's the wishes, I think that would help you with your direction.
Councilor Stoddard?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. You know, in the real business world, when we look at sales, revenues, income, expenses, if everybody was asked to cut their travel budget 10%, it would be cut. There would be no ands, ifs, or buts. It would be cut. And I don't see how we couldn't do that. That's my opinion. But on another issue, will we be supplied as a council all the flow chart on the different departments relative to their directors, supervisors, reports, and all that before we decide on the budget?
So a lot of the budget presentations did have an org chart in them, but I can definitely work with the mayor's office to see about consolidating a city one. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think so. And then just to show us exactly how much it would save us with the cuts that we potentially might make.
Just with the cuts, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I can do that.
Okay, and then the other last question, did you include the 36,500 I requested for the Veterans Hall?
So that has, I will say, the veteran, I have 20,000 because that's currently, I think I need additional discussion on that. I get your point on it, and I think that's one of those discussion items that we just, there's a lot of community donations and a lot of requests, and so that's not my decision, and so I guess need a decision from council on which community donations are you guys wanting? Are you wanting the advocates funded at the same amount or additional amount that they requested? Are you wanting Metro at the same amount or additional veterans? With the veterans, it gets, are we updating their MOU? Because I know you talked about utilities, to pay for utilities, or is it just the donation and not updating the MOU? I think that those are all decisions that are still kind of up in the air.
Yeah, like I say, the reason for it is we just wanted to match the county, because again, the county realizes that if they didn't donate that type of money like we should also, that they would have to build or supply by law other facilities, and the water flows downhill, the county has to charge, you have to charge the city some too. And when you look at the $84 million, and these are 2016 figures that are brought back into this county from veterans, retirement, medical services, and all the other stuff, it's a pretty good exchange relative to what they bring in versus what we pay out. So will I have the opportunity to try and justify that amount again then?
I'm not saying it's a bad cause. My dad is a veteran, so I get it.
Okay, and like I say, I know the mayor was visited by a couple of folks relative to that deal, and we're serving over 1,000 veterans a month now, and we could use more room, but we're not going to request it. But I just want to let everybody know that we are serving a lot of veterans, and it does save everybody money. We do have an agreement with the police department relative, if a veteran gets arrested, instead of going, prevent going to the cost of jail, that we work something out with boys or whatever. And so there's a lot of underlying savings there that we have right now that I don't think people realize. So anyway, thank you.
Councilor Register.
Thank you. I have some questions and then some comments too. So as far as the traveling thing, I don't think you have to travel to get your college or your continuing credits, but I do think that there's something about a professional organization that goes to those things, especially with the networking and stuff like that. And it's kind of, if the other cities are going, then Caldwell should probably be part of that. But I do think we have to take it as a necessity. Like, where does it fall in the line of necessities? Is it something we can do? Great. Then I think we should do it. Certainly, we wouldn't have wanted to keep Debbie, for example, from getting her I don't remember exactly what it was, but you had to travel for that, right?
It's about half the alphabet.
Yeah, it was a big deal, and she had to travel for that. So those kind, you know what I'm saying, like those kinds of things, as they're important. I just think there is some professionalism to it, but we just have to figure out what we can do. And then I had a question about fire. How do we even attempt to move forward with a budget without knowing what we're doing with them?
So obviously, like, right now, within the negotiations, there's still questions in, whether or not, I think if it comes up and they're very, the negotiations say, hey, we want to have this increase amount in the budget, then it's going to be conversations with me and the mayor, where can we cut and what can we do to fund this request? Because obviously with negotiations, I think that's why I'm part of negotiations, because I can be like, hey, look, I don't have any more money to give you, which is, I've been very blatantly honest with them. This is the budget, this is the revenue. It might be that fire is cutting operations to, like, operation expense to give to salaries, if that's what they want to have. And then we're looking next year at doing some sort of adjustment. Like, it could be a lot of scenarios. So, but by the budget hearing, we're going to have a resolution. I've kind of put the deadline of August 1st. If we're still not at a resolution at that point in time, I still am required to put together the budget. And I'm going to put it at its highest amount, and then fire will have, we can't go above that. That's just how it is. So, and then make adjustments after the fact.
Okay. I haven't been to the negotiations, but I do have some concerns about what I'm hearing about how they're going. So I think we need to figure out what we're doing and how we're going to work best with them, because they do have that negotiating power, and we all of us, or most of us, ran on this platform of public safety, and we just can't turn our back on that. So we need to figure out what we're doing with that. As far as the police and the mounted division, it's my understanding that division itself has obtained over $100,000 in private donations to run. So they run on donation, but we pay their salaries if the officers go to an event or whatever, correct?
So yes, the salaries would be covered by the city. And that's why we really put it as a separate line, because it's a division within the police department. There is the nonprofit, which has the ability to raise funds. You'll see that on our financial statements, because the nonprofit is run by city employees.
Okay, but either way, they are funded by donations, not tax dollars.
So I will say this, it's training that we're paying for. That's where the deputy chief had me move the funding from.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you real quick. When I talked to the chief on the 4th of July about the mounted police program, because it's sort of making it sound like you don't like it. So I'm trying to figure out why you don't like it. But
it's not my decision to like or like. It's a matter of transparency and making sure that everybody's aware. Just like we pull out canines, just like we pull out SWAT, those are separate line items within the police's budget. This is what we're doing.
Right, but those didn't come up. Just this one thing came up, so it feels a little targeted. But what I want to say is that when I was talking to the chief on the 4th of July about this unit, one of the things that I found very impressive about it was talking about how this is going to continue to benefit the city in the way of community involvement and community outreach and having officers on horseback downtown. And I think it's just a really valuable program where I don't see a lot of other cities doing that. We're still an agricultural town, we're still a country town. It's something that I think we can really utilize in the way of community outreach, crime prevention, all the stuff. So I would like to see a way to keep that going, especially since the program itself is funded by donations. And then if we have to figure out how officers participate in there, if there's a salary issue or whatever, but I guess I was a little confused why that was being targeted when there's line items for a gazillion other things. So that was just my comment. And then as far as the city attorney is concerned, when we do hire one, this is more of a question for the mayor, and they need office space, is that gym then an appropriate place for that?
I think it'd be so for this coming year, for one attorney. So we have
However they
yeah, so we
will
have an
work it out.
office already ready for that individual. If that is what is approved, appears that that's the direction it's going. So we do have office space for that individual. In the future, if you do add additional in-house attorneys, you're gonna have to add, paralegals, administrative assistants, things of that nature. Definitely, we would need additional space. But for what's being proposed, we do have the space ready and available for that.
Okay. And then, just to be honest, I'm a little on the fence about making the intern a paid job, only because just a necessity again. So I don't quite know where that falls yet, but I think also internships are really valuable for the youth in our community as well. So I don't have a decision about that, but I'm just bringing it up. And then I feel like, when we do these budgets, I don't hate the process. Like, I like it when every division comes in and speaks and gives their budgets and then what they need and all the kind of stuff and everything. But then I feel like between the time that we hear the presentations and the time we have to decide, there's just this empty space where we don't really have the conversations that I feel like we need to be having outside of right now, right? So is it possible, I hate to even suggest this, but is it possible then to have another meeting where we just roll up our sleeves and we come up and we really sit down and talk about every single thing and go, okay, well, Counselor Doty's come up with this list of cuts. Yes, 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 no. Here's what we feel like we need to keep. Here's this, here's that. And then we actually get down and dirty with it instead of just showing up in August and going, well, it's a yes or it's a no. Because I don't think we're ready. I don't think that the council's ready, and I don't think it's because we're not informed or knowledgeable, but I just don't see how we can approve a multi-million-dollar budget without having some time set aside for an actual conversation to go through each thing.
I'm not always available for a meeting, so.
Yeah, well, I guess that was probably more of a council question then.
And, the tough thing there is you're going to get, obviously there's 6 council members, you get 6 very different opinions on different things. And so trying to get a unanimous approval on each thing could get very difficult, very bogged down in the process. So that's where it can get to. And I agree, it is a lot of money, it's the taxpayers' money on that regards, but, going line by line, we'd be here till November, going through all of that.
Because it sounds like some of the counselors have already done the homework as far as where, cutting and whatever. I don't know, I'm not comfortable just coming forward and without having some sort of meeting where now we go, okay, we've heard all this stuff, now we come together and we actually talk about it.
So I will say, there's still more work to do with this budget. A lot of things are in process. When it comes to the general fund, I'm still $600,000 over budget. And so I am required to submit a balanced budget. If we have planned use of fund balance, that's fine, but this $600,000 is not planned use of fund balance, it's ongoing expenses. So I have to figure out, it might be cutting expenses, working with department heads, it might be shifting revenues around. These next 3 weeks are still a ton of work for me of trying to figure out how to balance this budget. And it's not just general fund, it's all the other funds, working with department heads, working with the mayor. If there's something that you feel that you really want in this budget, definitely talk to me, set up a meeting, call me, I'm available, and if you have questions, definitely I can answer those as well. So.
Well, I think you're very smart, and I think you're very, very talented, and I think you've done really good things, but I'm very nervous about not having numbers from fire before we commit to other stuff, and then I'm sure where you're at number-wise with them, but we don't. So if there's some sort of negotiation going on where there's a difference in some cost, and then somebody like Counselor Doty can go, well, we can take it from here, and then, make those adjustments or whatever has to be done. I just feel like every year we do this, where we have these presentations, then between now and when we make the decision, we just sort of lose contact. And I don't want to do that again, because I don't want to get in a position where we're making decisions where we're not completely informed, or we have to raise taxes. So that's just my opinion. Like, if we can't have another meeting to really just kind of go through everything, then I will meet with you directly.
I mean, is it your request, I guess I just am needing clarification, is your request that, because once we have the fire contract, that would be coming before city council, so that could come before the budget. I mean, that would be my hope. But if that's not come before city council, I guess, is it your wish that we have another budget workshop?
Well, what my concern is about fire, I know that you have a number in mind, right? And then you'll talk to them. And when you guys come out of it, it will be an agreement that has been made between the city, you, and the fire department. So I'm not so much worried about that. What I'm thinking of is, on the other side of this, we have this whole budget that now we're looking at to approve, and before that negotiation has happened, do we need to leave some wiggle room in this budget in case we need to do something different here? That's all I'm trying to get at. But the other part of that too is, like I said, I feel like we went through all the presentations, and as you see tonight, that Councilor Doty has this whole list of saying, well, we can get rid of these things, or the other councilors who had ideas. So that's all fine and good, but then now what do we do? So do we just go, we put it out there, and then, like, when does that decision get made? Maybe you can explain it better for me. I don't know. I feel like we need a noontime hash it out meeting and come up with what we're keeping, what we're not, and where we're at.
Yeah, I think I get where you're going, that I would certainly want to know if the mayor, some sort of notification what on that list he's considered or not considered, right? And know what he's done versus showing up to vote. And then I go, you didn't take that out, so I'm absolutely a no. So I see where you're coming from there.
Right, just so that I guess we're all on the same page. And then we know exactly where we need to be financially, and whether or not we need to leave some room for fire if we're still in negotiations with them, and make sure everybody's taken care of best we can.
I'm trying to, because, yeah, I get what you're saying, and I mean, the only other option would be another budget workshop, but with the timing of everything, the budget's going to be at the maximum level when I publish it, which means that you wouldn't be able to add to it, but you could cut from it. That would be...
I mean, I guess the goal would be to come up with something that everybody's comfortable with so that we don't have to mess with it later, right? And what my fear is that you're going to present a budget, and then there's going to be some pushback, and then you're not going to have something on August 1st. So is it appropriate to just either right now or have another meeting that says, okay, this is what we're cutting out, this is what we're doing, and then we have numbers everybody's comfortable with?
I mean, this would be the appropriate place to do that, so if you want to have that discussion right now, I mean, this would be the time to do it. I really don't see where the timing of it is going to be possible any other way, because this is where that...
So we have to do something. So how do we avoid this next year? Do we start even earlier so that we can have time to do it?
I started in May. I mean, that's the thing.
Well, I know, so if May didn't work, do we
so-
start even earlier so that, I mean, I hate putting that onto the directors, but like, we have to have a place where we can discuss. Otherwise, we walk out of here and say, well, everything's up in the air.
And I think after this workshop, we can definitely, because next year I'm already planning, and so I think we can have those discussions to figure out what the best timeline is, so.
And so as in regards to meetings, so August 20th is special city council meeting. Just so I think everybody has been made aware of that. So that was set for that Tuesday night was going to be the city council meeting, but we changed to Monday starting in August. However, state code does not allow you to change the date of when you've published for your final budget meeting. So we have to have a special meeting on the 20th. I heard another date, August 6th or 5th or,
Well, you've got to accept your tentative budget to start with, and that's your first meeting in August.
so that'd be August 5th,
Yes,
city
and
council
so then
meeting.
you bring it back for the council to consider the finalized budget, because there
Yeah.
can't be any waiver between the time you accept your tentative to the time that you accept the ordinance, which is your finalized budget.
Yeah. So that could be, that August 5th could work as that, and just plan on probably a long evening on that for what is presented. And again, you can always go down from that, from the August 5th to the August 20th. You cannot go up. So that'd be basically your baseline in that regard. So that would probably be that meeting. And again, just plan on, probably a very late night and just kind of going through it and, trying to, submitting those suggestions, and we'll work through it. As you noted, we had a number of them already with the cuts on positions that we had gone through, which was pretty much, I think, most of the ones that Councilor Doty had mentioned wanting to have cut, that we'd already planned on doing that. So we'd have that presented. Again, it's difficult to get unanimous on some of these things, but we can put that forward and then just plan on really going through all those things that are not in there that you want to see in there, and then moving forward with that discussion from that point to the 20th to see, hopefully that those can get implemented and kind of having an idea of where everybody's at to try to get that approved on the 20th. But August 5th would probably be kind of what you're looking for, I imagine, and just going through all of that.
And the only other thing I can say, I get where there's this discussion, but even if there's something, there might be travel and meeting that might not come before city council, but the bigger items that are over 50,000 are always going to be coming before city council, because that's our current process. And so even if you feel, I want it out of the budget, or maybe that's not the consensus, you will have another say later down the line when that contract comes before city council as well.
I know, but we did that. But that's how it happened with VRT, right? So that's the danger now in overpromising and then having stuff come up throughout the year and saying, well, we can't do it anymore. Because then it looks like we just don't want to do it, which really wasn't the case when there's impact fee issues and all this other stuff that went on. But I guess my question for the mayor at this point is, at that meeting, is it something where the capital stuff, like the coming forward and going, okay, well, who wants a lawnmower? And you raise your hand, and if it's not a majority, then it's off the list. So could it be something that simple, or is it not that easy?
I mean, I can pull up the capital list right now, we can go through it and discuss it if you want to have that, but there's currently there's 117 items on there.
Well, I'm just talking about that night, or sending it out and then us sending you back an email and saying, okay, the majority said no, or whatever, I don't know how to streamline it. I'm just saying that if we walk out of here without some kind of plan, then we are literally just leaving everything up in the air, and everybody's going to be confused when we come back to vote.
I mean, I would hope that it's not up in the air, but if it is, then I'm going to be sending you guys emails anyway, asking for, recommendations.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think the key here is to let the mayor know what you believe is important. To go line by line and item by item is just, I think we would be here for years to do that. So when I did those, I had a goal to reach of where I was headed, and I did go through the list that Raylan is talking about and picked out some that I thought could easily be transferred to next year. So I'm in a lawnmower versus someone that needs something to drag the softball field with. So I did look at that list and come to a conclusion. I'm not saying I'm all or nothing on that stuff. Maybe that'll generate a conversation from the mayor if he wants to negotiate something or sees the direction I'm trying to go and what I'm trying to do. And I've given him the list, but certainly if I have some absolute no's, he needs to know that so that they don't end up in there on budget night.
Can you give us the list then, so that we can look at it and go, yep, I agree, no, I don't? Is it as
Well, sure, you
simple as
can
that?
have my list, sure.
Thanks. I didn't know if we needed to have a meeting for that or not.
No, I
There's all
said
these
it all out
questions.
loud.
I
You have my
think you can
list.
do that, and
I'll get it for you.
more than welcome to send that to the council members,
Can
to
everybody
myself.
send their lists to me?
As long as nobody responds, we're cool. We can't go back and forth.
Yeah, so if you wouldn't
As long
want
as
to,
nobody responds.
Yep.
we're-
So we can just But we can give it to the mayor.
Yeah.
You can give it to there.
Or
yeah.
to
Yeah,
Ray
We
Lynn.
just can't have a conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't want to go offline and say, okay, I'm going to approve yours on this, you're going to approve this on mine. That's where we start getting into
No,
it.
no.
But yeah,
But-
sharing that, no problem.
Mr. Mayor, your neck must be sore because you're not looking to the left of the dais very much, so we'll let you
Green all
get
over
the
the
kink out
place.
of your neck. so-
Yeah, it's Councilor Denver.
So first of all, Raylan, I have a comment in there. First of all, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you standing up there with all that stamina, listening to grievances, listening to wish lists, listening to complaints and a bunch of what ifs, and then somewhere along the line, somebody throws a question in there for you to answer. So I appreciate you wearing the many different hats. One of the things I heard loud and clear and that I want to reiterate to all the city council members here is that you need to go in high with your initial budget, the highest you can. You throw all the extra VRT money in there, you throw all the extra everything in there. You throw it all in there because there is no opportunity to get that back unless you go in high. When you finalize your budget is when you cut out things. We would hate to be in a situation where we cut everything out and go in with a low budget initially, and then go, oh crap, we forgot about this, and we forgot about this, and then we're in the position of going, oh crap, guess what we don't get? We don't get extra funding for the veterans, or we don't get extra funding for this because we went in low. So I would hope that City Council would understand that when you submit your initial budget, you are going in high with everything in the budget, including the kitchen sink, correct? Mm-hmm. All right. And as the financial officer, what's your title?
Finance director.
The finance director, okay. As the chief finance director and somebody that we have confidence in, right, a tremendous amount of confidence in, your suggestion is that in August, you submit the highest budget possible, and then we weed it out from there. And is that your recommendation?
That would be the best option. I will tell you that to fill out the L2, which is the form I fill out to request a levy for property taxes, it is required that that form, or the ordinance we pass is matching the L2. So it is something that I cannot make a mistake on. This is triple and double, more than triple checked before I send it to Debbie, because we can do budget amendments at all time, but I cannot change the amount of levy this is something that multiple people, the tax commission checks on me, the county checks, so it is something that we want to get right.
And then finally, to be, completely counterintuitive to maybe some of the discussion that's happening, can we approve this budget for 2 years so you don't have to start this process next month for 2026?
I wish.
Yes, sounds good to me. Councilor Holgen.
I agree with Councilor Register some. We're not ready to say yes or no on this budget. I'm not ready to say yes or no on this budget. When our finance director says that we're $600,000 in the hole, and when we have police and fire blowing up their overtime budget, and we don't have an answer for that, I think we need to be somewhere, we need to have some better answers before we say yes or no for a budget. I mean, I'm struggling with this. I mean, I'm looking, Ray Lynn said we have 117 asks in special projects, it's $68 million. I think our department heads need to have some really serious conversations about what we can, I mean, I've been through a lot of slim budgets. I was chief in 2008 through the whole time when we had no money, and I know about cutting budgets. And when we're $600,000 in the hole, that's a problem. And I would never come back without knowing what we cut to solve that $600,000 and say yes to that budget. I'm not going to say yes to foregone revenue. I don't think that's appropriate. I think we need to cut our budget to get where we need to be. And so I don't know how we communicate the changes and the corrections to make sure that when Ray Lynn comes and sees us in August, we have a balanced budget. but when we're talking about cutting $600,000 and correcting some of our overspending, that's a big deal to me. And I really think we need some answers before we say yes or no. Anyway, that's my thought.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I have one more thing. Because this is important. Now, I've heard Councilor Dittenberg talk about raising the levy before. I don't want to do that. So I understand that we need to be high on the budget so that we're being careful. But if, in order to be high on the budget, then are we having to raise the levy?
So this budget does calculate the 3% increase, the new construction and the annexation. I can have Marlon bring up the calculation if you want, that I talked about last budget workshop. The new recommendation, because of the cost of the police positions, is to do the additional amount to meet the 8% cap of that foregone. It's about $150,000. So it doesn't necessarily raise. Here's the dilemma, because the values could raise, and so that could raise somebody's house even if we left budget neutral. That property taxes on houses could still change because the valuation changes every year. And so same with it could go down. But I will tell you that the state last year gave a credit, and that is not necessarily going to be passed through this next year because there wasn't a surplus. So I think all residents are going to see an increase because of that.
Well, so, right, and as a realtor, I understand about property value, but it concerns me that if we're not going to see a credit from the state, if property values go up and people's property taxes go up, they're already going to see an increase, then we're talking about increasing their taxes. Plus, if the school bond ends up passing in November, then that, I mean, I don't know how much that changes because it was already there, but the Canyon County Ambulance District, all these other things that are coming up. So it's not just us, right? So it's all these other variables that could be raising property taxes, and I feel like now we're going to take this 3% increase to get where we need to be. So then my question is, if the police department, you said they need $150,000?
So the foregone would add $150,000. Like I said, with that included, I'm still $600,000 short.
Okay.
And we have to pull from other budgets.
Okay, but with the suggestions that Councilor Doty made of taking $1.8 million off the budget, is that what it was? 1.5, then are you now ahead?
No, because not all of those suggestions were directly from general fund in the police, and so no.
Do you, any idea how, from that 600,000 with what he was talking about, where it brings you? I mean, I know he just kind of threw that out there, but like a roundabout number? These are the questions, right, that I think warrant another, like some kind of roll your sleeves up and have these meetings. Because then if we're only at whatever amount, I just don't want to raise property taxes just to raise it so that we're high, just in case. And then when we don't use it, then we just do frivolous spending somewhere else.
Which I wouldn't recommend that either, and I totally get that reasoning. The property tax budgets as themselves, so the special revenue funds, library, streets, capital fund, airport, all of those, the funds are utilized, and then with police and fire. So it's not something that where the property tax wouldn't be used. So essentially the way I have it is that property tax pays for salaries. And so with adding in the positions that were not calculated in the original presentation of the budget, that one sergeant, 2 police officers, 1 admin assistant, 1 community service officer, and the accounting specialist, adding all of those back in impacted the budget, even though there was other reductions. So.
Well, that's, I think, where what Councilor Allgood was saying is people need to have those hard conversations and see, because I am a huge police supporter, so whatever we can do for them, we can do. But at the same time, we have to be mindful of people who are paying property taxes in our city. So where do we, come up with the where's the balance? But just out of curiosity, is there a way of raising the impact fees and putting that money back on the developers instead of the community?
So I'm meeting with the Impact Fee Committee on the 17th, but impact fees pay for specific capital projects that are on the capital improvement plan, so they cannot be paid for personnel or operating costs. They are for just capital projects.
So where else can salaries come from?
Salaries come, revenues, sales tax, which is decreasing this year, franchise fees, which we're moving around, obviously the contracts like the rural fire district, the SRO contracts, the admin allocation, which police and fire's salaries are not included in those, but all of the other mayor, city council, clerk, all of those costs are included in those.
So is some of the salary problems at the police department because that SRO contract didn't get renewed?
That is why they're holding those positions vacant. So unless the levy gets approved in November, which then that contract would be negotiated, but that's why we're not completely taking those positions out of the budget.
Okay.
Councilor Stoddard?
Mr. Mayor, you know I value your opinion highly by now. So, in your opinion, if we stuck with what we have right now, would we have to use all of the foregone revenue available to us?
So no, we have about 3 million in foregone, which we could not take at all. We would just be taking to reach the max of the 8% cap of our budget, which is about $150,000.
Okay.
This does not, there's only two options per foregone. There's one that is up to 1%, which is ongoing, which means that it's included in your base budget. And the other one is 2%, and that's for a capital project. We are not taking that amount.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other green lights at the moment. So, but I was looking at schedule, and so perhaps one more meeting, maybe good to have before August 5th. So I was looking at July 29th
Mr.
or
Mayor,
July 30th. Yes, Councilor
I
Gordon.
haven't heard when our next fire. We canceled the last one.
It hasn't been rescheduled, but I think we're looking for July 25th or 26th.
Okay, so I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure,
it was
again, that
after
it didn't
that.
happen after that.
Yeah. So July 29th is a Monday, so we wouldn't be overlapping. Now, we're not going to have probably as many people here as we would on a city council meeting, so the July 30th is a Tuesday, so I didn't want to overlap with the farmer's market with the parking and stuff like that, but we probably wouldn't have as many people here as at a council meeting. So,
July 29th is not a city council meeting.
yeah, so no, I was just
Yeah.
thinking Monday or either that Monday or Tuesday, the 29th or the 30th. Neither one is a city council meeting, but just the,
What time?
probably same time, 4 to 7.
The 29th would be harder for me, but I just might be late.
Which day? Well, but you need
The
the
30th
answers
is better
that
for
you're
me.
looking for,
Mhm.
So it's no need in starting it, it'll be late. 28.
30th is better.
How about does that work for,
I'm good.
you're good?
You schedule it.
Counselor Williams? Okay. Counselor Stoddard?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ray Lynn, does that give you time to do what you need to do?
Yes, my end date is July or August 1st, so I have plans to have a balanced budget by then to get it all ready.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's given us much time, because August 5th, we are obviously meeting already, so it has to be before then, so that's really, those are the two options. So with July 30th, and that gives us enough time to do notifications and all that, Madam Clerk?
It's a workshop, so
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then we will plan on that, and then, like I said, send those lists in, and me and Ray Lynn will get together and kind of go over everything. And as we do, if there are something on the list that we'll talk obviously with those directors, and if we feel strongly that we still need something that you're wanting cut, we will let you know and have a reason for it, so that you understand that. And then that way, whether it changes your mind or not, no problem, but at least you would know why the thought is to continue moving that forward, even though you had asked for that to be cut, so.
Can we just clarify for a minute? So the list will be sent to Raven and you,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that's at 4 o'clock, Mr. Mayor?
So 4 PM, so we'll plan on, again, 4 PM till let's say 4 to 6. We can go beyond 6. Did we have to give it an end time? Could we just stay 4? Okay, let's do that. So I just don't want to have to sit around waiting to end a meeting. So I'm sure to go beyond that, but, so 4 PM, and we'll get that noticed out, but if everybody could get that on their schedules, we'll plan on Tuesday, 4 PM. I think that would end us for tonight. Okay, a lot of work to do, so we'll plan on getting together soon, Raylene. Okay. So that, sorry, just real quick, so that does end our workshop for this evening. Appreciate those that are here, those that are watching, and we'll be back on July 30th at 4 PM.